The room is quiet, save for the gentle hum of a refrigerator and the soft tap of a thumb against glass. In the dim light, a face is illuminated by the blue glow of a screen, scrolling through a river of images, a seemingly endless stream of moments that belong to other people. There are pictures of laughter at a dinner table, of hands held on a distant beach, of smiling faces gathered under warm lights. It is a universe of connection, of shared joy, delivered directly into the palm of a hand. And yet, in the stillness of the room, it only seems to amplify the silence. A quiet, hollow ache begins to surface, a feeling so common in our world that it has almost become a part of the background noise of our lives. It is the feeling of being lonely. This feeling is not a personal failure. It is not a sign of being broken or unlovable. It is more like a fever of the modern soul, a condition born from a world that has never been more connected, and yet has left so many feeling profoundly adrift, separated from others, and even from themselves. We are told to seek the cure outside, to collect more friends, more experiences, more possessions, to fill the inner void with noise and distraction. We chase connection through filtered profiles and fleeting interactions, hoping that the next notification, the next message, the next plan will finally be the thing that makes the feeling go away. But so often, it doesn't. The chase itself can leave us feeling more exhausted, more empty than when we began, like drinking salt water to quench a thirst. But what if the answer was never outside of us to begin with? What if there was another way, an ancient path that does not ask us to run from the feeling of loneliness, but invites us to sit down with it, to listen to it, and to understand its true nature? This path suggests that the source of our suffering is not the absence of other people, but a fundamental misunderstanding of who we are. It is not a religion in the way many understand the word, but rather a science of the mind, a practical set of tools and insights for exploring our own inner world. It is the wisdom of the Buddhist path. This journey we are about to embark on is an invitation, a gentle turning of our attention away from the endless noise outside and toward the profound stillness that waits within. It is an invitation to discover that the very emptiness we fear might just be the doorway to the most profound connection and peace we have ever known. To begin this journey inward, we must first become exceptionally clear about what it is we are feeling. We use the word lonely, but this single word is like a closed door, and behind it lies a vast and complex landscape of emotion. The first step in any healing is to dare to open that door, to step inside and look around with courage and gentleness, so that we may understand the terrain of our own heart. So let us begin by drawing a distinction, a line in the sand of our own consciousness, between two states that are often confused, but are as different as night and day. These states are loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is a feeling of lack. It is an ache. It is a hunger in the center of the chest for a connection that feels absent. It is not defined by the number of people around you, for one can feel desperately lonely in the middle of a joyful party, in a bustling city, or even within a long-term relationship. Loneliness is an internal state of exile. It carries with it a subtle, or sometimes not so subtle, feeling of being on the outside looking in. It is the face pressed against the glass of a warm and inviting room while feeling trapped out in the cold. The energy of loneliness is one of contraction, of closing down. It is often accompanied by a host of other painful emotions, a bitter cocktail of anxiety, sadness, restlessness, and even a quiet despair. It is fueled by a narrative, a story the mind tells itself, a story of deficiency. The story might say, "I am not wanted," or "No one truly understands me," or "There is something fundamentally wrong with me that keeps me separate from others." Loneliness is a feeling of being forced into a state of isolation against your will. It is a prison whose walls are built not of bricks and mortar, but of painful thoughts and feelings of separation. It is a state of resistance, a constant, draining battle against the reality of the present moment. It is the painful gap between the connection we crave and the disconnection we feel. Now, let us turn our attention to a completely different quality of being. Let us consider solitude. If loneliness is a prison, solitude is a sanctuary. If loneliness is a feeling of lack, solitude is a feeling of fullness. The word itself feels different on the tongue. Solitude. It speaks of something quiet, something chosen. Solitude is the intentional, deliberate act of being with oneself. It is not an escape from others, but a return to the home of your own being. It is the choice to unplug from the constant demands and noise of the external world in order to listen to the quieter voice within. The energy of solitude is expansive, it is open, it is nourishing. It is in the quiet space of solitude that creativity can blossom, that insight can arise, that the soul can finally exhale and be at rest. It is the feeling of sitting with a cup of tea and watching the rain fall, not waiting for anyone, not needing anything, but simply being present with the moment as it is. It is a walk in the woods where you are not thinking about what you are missing, but are instead absorbed in the feeling of the earth beneath your feet and the sound of the wind in the trees. Solitude is a friendship with oneself. It does not depend on the absence of problems, but on the presence of self-compassion. It is a state of being alone without feeling lonely. It is a quiet celebration of one's own company, a recognition that within you is a source of peace and wisdom that is always accessible, if only you give it the space to emerge. Our modern society often blurs the line between these two states. It teaches us to fear being alone, to see it as a sign of failure or unpopularity. We are encouraged to fill every spare moment with activity, with communication, with consumption. The silence of being alone can feel deafening because we are so unaccustomed to it. We mistake the quiet sanctuary of solitude for the desolate prison of loneliness, and so we run from it, right back into the very noise that exhausts us and keeps us from ever truly meeting ourselves. There is a timeless story that illustrates this distinction perfectly. It is the story of a great king and a humble hermit. The king lived in an opulent palace, surrounded by hundreds of courtiers, servants, and entertainers. Every night, his halls were filled with music, laughter, and extravagant feasts. He had access to every pleasure imaginable and was never, for a single moment, physically by himself. Yet, every night, when the music faded and the guests departed, the king would lie awake on his silk sheets, his mind racing, his heart filled with a profound and unshakable emptiness. He felt a deep, gnawing loneliness that all the treasures and all the company in his kingdom could not soothe. He was surrounded by a sea of people, yet he was an island of despair. Not far from this palace, in the heart of a quiet forest, lived a hermit. He lived in a simple cave, with nothing to his name but a single cloth robe, a wooden bowl for begging, and the stillness of the trees for company. To the world, he was the definition of alone. He had no one. But the hermit's heart was not empty. It was full. It was full of peace. He found companionship in the rhythm of his own breath, in the changing of the seasons, in the quiet presence of the animals that shared his forest home. When he sat in silence, he did not feel a lack. He felt a deep and abiding connection to all of life. His state of being alone was not a punishment. It was a profound and joyful state of solitude. He was physically isolated, but he was connected to everything. This story teaches us a crucial lesson. Loneliness and solitude are not determined by our external circumstances. They are not a matter of how many people are in the room. They are internal states, determined entirely by the quality of our own mind. The king's mind was full of craving, restlessness, and a desperate need for external validation. And so, even in a crowd, he created the prison of loneliness. The hermit's mind was calm, content, and at peace with itself. And so, even in physical isolation, he created the sanctuary of solitude. Therefore, the very first and perhaps most powerful step we can take on this path is simply this: to learn to acknowledge the feeling of loneliness when it arrives without judgment and without immediately trying to fix it or run from it. It is an act of profound kindness to ourselves. So, the next time that familiar ache arises in your chest, the next time the story of "I am all alone" begins to play in your mind, see if you can just pause, take a gentle breath, and instead of fighting it, instead of grabbing your phone or turning on the television, just allow yourself to name it softly, internally. You can say to yourself, This is the feeling of loneliness. I see you. You greet it not as an enemy, but perhaps as a tired messenger who has traveled a long way to bring you a message about what you are truly longing for. In this simple act of acknowledgement, something remarkable happens. By turning toward the feeling with gentle awareness, you are no longer possessed by it. You are not the loneliness. You are the one who is aware of the loneliness. You are the spacious sky that is holding the lonely cloud. This simple act of naming, of seeing clearly, is the beginning of freedom. By taking this first step, by daring to look at the pain and call it by its true name, we have done something incredibly important. We have stopped running. We have begun to look directly at our own experience. Now that we have identified the symptom, this painful feeling of loneliness, we are ready to proceed as a wise physician would. We are ready to look deeper, to investigate its origins, and to understand the root cause of this dis-ease. For this, the ancient teachings provide us with a clear and profound map, a diagnosis of the human condition that has resonated through the ages. We are now ready to explore the first great truth of this path. Having named the feeling, distinguishing the pain of loneliness from the peace of solitude, we are now standing at the threshold of a profound insight. We have taken the brave first step of looking directly at our own experience. The path of Buddhist wisdom now invites us to place this experience into a larger context, a universal framework for understanding the human condition. This framework begins with what are known as the Four Noble Truths, and the very first truth is perhaps the most direct and uncompromising teaching the Buddha ever gave. It is the truth of dukkha. The word from the ancient Pali language, dukkha, is often translated into English as suffering, and this single word, suffering, can be a barrier for many. It sounds heavy, dramatic, absolute. We may think to ourselves, my life isn't constant suffering. I have moments of joy, of happiness, of peace. This teaching isn't for me. This is a completely understandable reaction, because the English word suffering is too small to contain the vastness of what dukkha truly means. It is far more subtle, more nuanced, and much, much more pervasive than just overt pain or tragedy. Imagine the sound of a very faint, high-pitched hum in a quiet room, a sound so constant you almost stop noticing it, but it creates a subtle tension in the background. Or think of a wheel on a cart that is just slightly off-center. The cart still moves forward, but the ride is never perfectly smooth. There is always a subtle bump, a persistent vibration, a feeling that things are not quite right. This is dukkha. It is the background static of dissatisfaction that hums beneath the surface of our lives. It is the low-grade anxiety about the future, the subtle ache of regret about the past. It is the stress of meeting deadlines, the irritation of being stuck in traffic, the disappointment when an experience doesn't live up to our expectations. It is the feeling of being restless, of wanting to be somewhere else, of feeling that something is missing even when life is objectively good. Dukkha is this fundamental, pervasive quality of unsatisfactoriness, the inherent out-of-jointness of a life lived without clear understanding. And within this vast spectrum of dukkha, from the slightest irritation to the deepest anguish, our modern experience of loneliness holds a unique and powerful place. While the Buddha spoke of the great unavoidable dukkha of old age, sickness, and death, one could argue that in our contemporary world, the experience of profound inner loneliness is one of the most prevalent and corrosive forms of dukkha that we face. It is the sickness of the spirit that perfectly embodies this principle of unsatisfactoriness. The ache of loneliness is the very definition of dukkha. It is the constant, painful awareness of a gap between what is and what we deeply long for. It is a state of perpetual dis-ease, a restlessness of the heart that finds no comfort. When we framed loneliness as a feeling of lack, as an internal exile, we were describing dukkha in its most personal and intimate form. To look at this truth, the truth of dukkha, is not an act of pessimism. This is a critical point to understand. A doctor who listens to your symptoms and correctly identifies an illness is not being negative or pessimistic. That doctor is being a realist. They are being effective. They are performing the essential first step, without which no healing is possible. To deny the diagnosis, To pretend the symptoms aren't there is not optimism, it is delusion. Acknowledging the reality of dukkha in our lives is the most courageous and compassionate act of realism we can perform. The Buddha did not state this first truth to condemn us to misery. He stated it with immense compassion as a way of saying, I see it. I see the difficulty. I see the subtle and gross ways that life can be unsatisfactory and painful. You are not wrong for feeling this way. You are not alone in this experience. This feeling is a shared, universal part of the human condition, and because it is a shared condition, it can be understood, it can be investigated, and ultimately, it can be healed. There is a powerful analogy the Buddha used, the parable of the burning house. Imagine you are living in a beautiful house that you love. You have spent years decorating it, filling it with precious things. One day, you begin to smell a faint trace of smoke. Then, you see small flames starting to lick at the edges of the curtains. The wise and realistic person does not say, "Oh, this is terrible, my house is doomed," and then sit down in despair. That is pessimism. The wise person also does not say, "It's probably nothing. I'm sure it will go out on its own," and go back to polishing the silverware. That is foolish optimism or denial. The wise person says, with clear-eyed urgency, "This house is on fire. The most important thing I can do right now is to find the way out." In this story, the house is our life, with all its attachments and pleasures. The smoke and the flames are dukkha in all its forms, from the quiet hum of anxiety to the roaring fire of grief or loneliness. The first noble truth is simply the wise and urgent recognition that the house is on fire. It is not a statement of despair. It is the most powerful possible motivation to begin searching for the exit. When we can apply this understanding directly to our own feeling of loneliness, something remarkable happens. A great burden begins to lift. For most of us, loneliness carries with it a deep sense of personal shame. Our inner critic whispers, "What is wrong with me? Why can't I connect? I must be flawed, unlovable." We internalize the pain and believe it is a verdict on our own worth. But when we see loneliness through the lens of dukkha, we shift from self-blame to universal understanding. The thought is no longer, "What is wrong with me?" The thought becomes, this is a manifestation of dukkha. This is part of the human condition. This is the smoke I am smelling. This shift is profoundly liberating. It takes the pain out of the cramped, dark basement of personal shame and brings it into the open air of a shared, universal experience. We stop seeing it as our personal fault and start seeing it as a condition to be investigated with kindness and curiosity. So we have now taken this essential step. We have looked squarely at the first noble truth. We have acknowledged the reality of dukkha, not as a depressing philosophy, but as an honest and compassionate diagnosis of our shared human experience. And we have recognized our own intimate pain of loneliness as one of its most potent modern expressions. We have seen the smoke. We have felt the heat. The diagnosis has been made. And so, the next logical question must arise in any intelligent mind. If this is the illness, if this is the fire, what is its cause? Where does this flame, this deep and abiding ache of loneliness, actually come from? The path of wisdom does not abandon us with a diagnosis. It guides us with precision and clarity to investigate the very origin of the fire. It invites us now to explore the second great truth. We have stood with courage and looked upon the first noble truth, acknowledging the reality of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness that can color our lives, and we have recognized our own loneliness as a deep and resonant expression of this truth. We have seen the smoke. The wise physician, having identified the illness, now proceeds to diagnose its cause. This brings us to the second noble truth, the truth of samudaya, which means origin or source. This truth answers the most pressing question that arises from the first. If we feel this ache of loneliness, this dukkha, where does it actually come from? The answer is at once simple and profound, and it points directly back into the landscape of our own mind. The origin of our suffering, the source of the flame, is an energy the Buddha called tanha. This Pali word, tanha, is most often translated as craving or desire, but a more visceral and accurate translation is thirst. Think of the feeling of intense thirst on a hot day. It is not a casual wish for a drink. It is a primal, compelling, all-consuming urge. It is a feeling of inner dryness, of profound lack, that drives you relentlessly to seek something outside of yourself to quench it. This is tanha. It is the insatiable thirst of the mind. It is the engine of our restlessness, the force that keeps us perpetually seeking, grasping, and pursuing something in the future that we believe will finally make us feel whole and complete. The second noble truth states, with radical clarity, that it is this inner thirst, this tanha, that is the direct cause of our dukkha. So how does this relate to loneliness? The teaching is revolutionary. It suggests that the pain of our loneliness does not arise from the simple, objective fact of being alone. It arises from our thirst for connection, our thirst to not be alone. It is the clinging, the desperate grasping for a different reality that creates the friction and the heat of our suffering. The cause is not an external lack of people, but an internal state of intense craving. This thirst, this tanha, is not a single, simple force. It manifests in three primary ways, and we can see all of them at play in our experience of loneliness. The first is the thirst for sensual pleasures. This is not just a thirst for physical sensations, but for any pleasant experience that comes through our six senses, including the mind. In the context of loneliness, this is the craving for the pleasant feeling of being liked, the warmth of a loving conversation, the comfort of a reassuring touch, the validation of a text message appearing on our screen. We thirst for the experience of belonging, for the sweet taste of being included. When we don't have these things, our mind, driven by this thirst, creates the painful feeling of lack that we call loneliness. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is the thirst for existence, the thirst for becoming. This is the craving to be a certain kind of person, to solidify a particular identity. We thirst to be someone who is loved, someone who is popular, someone who is in a happy relationship, someone who has an exciting social life. This is the ego's project, the constant construction and maintenance of a self that we can feel proud of. This thirst is powerfully fueled by our modern culture of social media, where we are constantly presented with curated images of the ideal, connected self. We cling to this image, this idea of who we should be, and loneliness feels like a direct threat to that identity. It whispers to the ego, you are failing. The self you are trying to be is not real. And so we suffer, not just from the lack of connection, but from the perceived failure of our own identity project. The third form of thirst is the thirst for non-existence. This is the craving to get rid of something unpleasant. When the pain of loneliness, fueled by the first two thirsts, becomes too intense, this third thirst arises. It is the desperate urge for the painful feeling to simply go away. It is the voice that screams, I can't stand this feeling anymore. This thirst for annihilation drives us toward distraction. We lose ourselves in endless scrolling, binge-watch entire seasons of shows, numb ourselves with food or alcohol, or fill every waking moment with busy work. We are trying to annihilate the present moment, to escape the reality of our own uncomfortable feelings. But paradoxically, this very act of pushing away, this resistance, is a form of clinging. We are clinging to the desire for the feeling to be gone, and this struggle only tightens the knot of our suffering, ensuring the feeling persists. To illustrate how this clinging mind creates its own prison, there is a famous story used in Asia to teach this principle. It is the story of the monkey trap. Hunters who want to catch a monkey will take a coconut or a hollow gourd and drill a hole in it. The hole is just big enough for a monkey to slide its open hand inside, but too small for it to pull out a closed fist. They place a sweet piece of fruit or some rice inside the gourd and tie it to a tree. Soon, a monkey comes along. It smells the sweet treat, sees it through the hole, and its thirst, its tanha, arises. It slides its open hand into the gourd and triumphantly grasps the prize. Now, its hand is a fist, clutching the rice. It tries to pull its hand out, but it's stuck. It pulls and shrieks and struggles, but it cannot get free. The hunters approach. The monkey sees them coming, and its terror grows. It continues to pull and fight, but the trap holds firm. The solution to the monkey's problem is devastatingly simple. All it has to do is open its hand, let go of the rice, and it will be free. But its craving, its clinging to the prize, is so powerful, so absolute, that it cannot bring itself to let go. It will sacrifice its very freedom and its life for a small handful of rice that it cannot even eat. We are that monkey. The gourd is our situation. The sweet rice is the object of our thirst, the perfect relationship, the constant validation, the relief from uncomfortable feelings. Our clenched fist is our clinging mind, our tana. The suffering of loneliness is the feeling of being trapped, of pulling and struggling against the confines of our situation. Freedom is available to us in every single moment. The price of freedom is simply to let go, to open the hand of the mind and release our grip on what we think we need, but we don't. We cling to our ideas of how life should be. We cling to our need for others to make us feel whole. We cling to our resistance to our own feelings, and in doing so, we remain trapped. The fear of silence, the fear of being abandoned, these are simply the sounds of the monkey shrieking as the hunter approaches, the terror born from an unwillingness to just let go. To see this, to truly see this mechanism within ourselves, is not a cause for shame or self-blame. It is the opposite. It is profoundly empowering. Why? Because if the cause of our suffering were externalif, our loneliness was truly caused by a lack of good people in the world, or by some flaw in our stars, then we would be helpless victims. But the second noble truth teaches us something far more hopeful. It teaches us that the source of the fire is internal. The cause of the suffering is in the grasping of our own mind. And if the cause is within us, then the solution must also be within us. The key to the trap is, and always has been, in our own hand. We are not helpless. We are not doomed to suffer. We simply need to learn how to open our hand. This profound realization that the cause of our suffering is knowable and internal is not the end of the path. It is the beginning of real hope. It illuminates the way forward, because a problem that has a known cause is a problem that has a potential solution. It points directly to the possibility of freedom, the possibility that this thirst can be quenched not by drinking from the outside world, but by finding a wellspring of peace within. It points to the possibility of an end to suffering. And this very possibility, the possibility of cessation, is the third great and noble truth. We have walked together into the heart of our own unease. We have looked at the first noble truth, identifying the pervasive unsatisfactoriness, the dukkha, that manifests as our loneliness. And we have courageously faced the second noble truth, uncovering the source of this fire in the relentless thirst, the clinging and craving of our own mind, the energy of tana. To stop here would be to leave a patient with a diagnosis and an explanation of their illness, but no hope of a cure. This is not the way of wisdom. The path of the Buddha is, above all, a path of profound optimism, grounded in realism. And so, we now arrive at the great turning point, the crucial pivot of this entire teaching. We arrive at the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha. Nirodha is a word that translates as cessation, ending, or extinguishing. It is the good news. It is the promise that follows the diagnosis. It is a truth based on impeccable, natural logic. If a specific cause leads to a specific result, then the removal of that cause will lead to the removal of that result. If the fire of our suffering is ignited and fueled by the thirst of craving, then when that thirst is pacified, the fire naturally goes out. If our loneliness is the pain of a clenched fist stuck in a trap, Nirodha is the truth that it is possible to open that fist. It is the radical, life-altering promise that freedom from suffering is not a mere fantasy, but an attainable reality for any human being. Before we explore what this cessation is, it is vital to understand what it is not, for the idea has been subject to many misunderstandings. Nirodha, the cessation of suffering, is not the cessation of life. It is not a doctrine of annihilation or a wish for nothingness. It is not about disappearing into a blank void. It is the cessation of the fever of life, not life itself. It is the end of the friction, the struggle, the exhausting internal war we wage against reality. It is the extinguishing of the flames of greed, hatred, and delusion, leaving behind not a cold emptiness, but the radiant warmth of a mind at peace. Furthermore, Nirodha is not a state of cold, emotionless apathy. It is not about becoming a stone, indifferent to the world, unable to feel joy or love or sadness. This is a common fear, that the spiritual path will rob us of our humanity. The reality is the precise opposite. The cessation of suffering is freedom from the tyranny of our emotions, not the absence of them. In our ordinary agitated state, an emotion like anger or grief can feel like a tidal wave crashing over us, possessing us entirely, dictating our every thought and action. We are not feeling grief, we are grief, we are anger. But in a state of inner peace, the emotions still arise, but they are like clouds passing through the vast open sky of our awareness. You can feel the sharp pang of sadness, the warmth of affection, the coolness of disappointment. But these feelings no longer have the power to overwhelm you. You have a vantage point, a spaciousness around your feelings. You can experience the richness and texture of life's emotions without being enslaved by them. It is the difference between being lost in a storm at sea and watching that same storm from a safe, solid lighthouse on the shore. Finally, Nirodha is not some distant, otherworldly heaven that we can only hope to reach after we die. It is a state of mind, a quality of being that can be touched and experienced right here in this very life, in this very body. The Buddha called it the supreme happiness, a happiness that is not dependent on external conditions, a peace that cannot be shaken by the ups and downs of worldly fortune. It is the coolness that is left when the fires of craving have been put out. To understand this more deeply, let us use the beautiful and timeless analogy of a mountain lake. Imagine a lake high in the mountains, far from the noise of the world. The fundamental nature of this lake's water is to be perfectly clear, perfectly still, and to hold a profound silence. When the water is in this natural state, its surface acts as a flawless mirror, reflecting with perfect fidelity the vast blue sky, the drifting white clouds, the steady mountains, and the silvery light of the moon. This is a metaphor for the true nature of our own mind. Intrinsically, our mind is clear, calm, luminous, and capable of reflecting reality just as it is. This is our birthright, our default setting. But now, imagine the wind begins to blow. The wind represents our tanha, the thirsts and cravings of the mind. The wind sweeps across the lake, and the once still surface is whipped into agitated waves. The water becomes choppy and turbulent. The mud and silt from the bottom of the lake are stirred up, and the water loses its clarity, becoming murky and opaque. In this state, the lake can no longer reflect the sky. It reflects only its own agitation. This is our mind in its usual state of dukkha. It is disturbed by the winds of wanting, the winds of aversion, the winds of confusion. Our thoughts are chaotic. Our emotions are turbulent, and we cannot see ourselves or the world clearly. We experience this internal weather as anxiety, stress, restlessness, and the deep ache of loneliness. The path to peace, then, is not about trying to force the waves to be still. You cannot stand on the shore and command the water to be calm. That would be a foolish and exhausting struggle. The path to peace is about understanding the wind. It is about creating the conditions in our own life and our own mind for the wind of craving to naturally subside. Nirodha, this third noble truth, is the experience of the wind dying down. When the grasping, the pushing, the resisting, the craving finally ceases, something magical happens. The lake, of its own accord, without any further effort, naturally settles. The waves subside, the mud and silt slowly drift back down to the bottom, and the water returns to its inherent nature, clear, still, and luminous, once again reflecting the vastness of the sky. This is cessation. It is not something we have to build or create. It is a return to what we already are. Peace is not something we find. It is what is left when we remove the disturbances. What does this mean for our loneliness? It means a transformation of our entire orientation to life and to relationships. The cessation of thirst means the desperate need for another person to validate you, to complete you, to make you feel okay, has dissolved. You are no longer the monkey with its fist clenched in the trap. Your hand is open. You can now enter into relationships not from a place of hunger and lack, but from a place of fullness and generosity. You can love freely because you are no longer using love as a strategy to fill your own inner void. Being by yourself is no longer a threat, no longer a sign of failure. The silence is no longer filled with the roar of your unmet needs. It is filled with the quiet, contented presence of your own peaceful being. You have discovered the still lake within. You are free to enjoy the company of others, and you are free to enjoy the profound peace of your own solitude. This is true freedom. The third noble truth of Nirodha is the light at the end of the tunnel. It is the assurance that the cycle of thirst and dissatisfaction is not an endless one. It is a message of ultimate hope. The cause of our suffering is known, and therefore its end is possible. But this beautiful promise would be incomplete if it did not come with a set of instructions. If this state of peace, this cessation of thirst, this stilling of the waters is possible, then how? How do we calm the winds? How do we learn to open the clenched fist of our mind? The teachings do not leave us wondering. The diagnosis has been made, the cause identified, and the possibility of a cure has been confirmed. Now, we are ready to look at the prescription itself. We are ready to explore the fourth and final noble truth, the practical, step-by-step path that leads directly to the peaceful shore of Nirodha. We have journeyed through a profound diagnosis of our human condition. We have faced the truth of our own disease, our dukkha, which so often wears the face of loneliness. We have uncovered its source, not in the world outside, but in the inner mechanism of our own clinging mind, our tanha. And most importantly, we have been given the luminous promise of Nirodha, the truth that this suffering can end, that the fires of craving can be extinguished, and that a state of profound peace is our inherent nature. A destination has been illuminated on the horizon, a peaceful shore free from the storms of our unease. But the question remains, how do we cross the turbulent waters to get there? It is here that the path reveals its ultimate compassion and practicality. The Buddha, having found his own way out of the dense and tangled forest of suffering, did not simply call back to us that freedom was possible. He drew a map. He laid out a clear, detailed, and practical guide that anyone from any walk of life can follow. This map is the fourth and final noble truth. It is called the Magga, the path, and it is known as the Noble Eightfold Path. It is called noble because walking it ennobles the heart and mind, leading us away from fear and confusion and toward wisdom and compassion. And it is called eightfold because it is comprised of 8 interconnected factors that, when cultivated together, create a complete and holistic way of life, a blueprint for healing our loneliness and awakening our hearts. It is helpful to think of these 8 factors not as a linear sequence of steps you must complete in order, like climbing a ladder. Rather, think of them as the 8 strands of a single, powerful rope. Each strand supports and strengthens all the others. When woven together, they create a lifeline that can pull us out of the depths of our suffering. These 8 strands can be grouped into 3 fundamental aspects of training, which gives us a clearer picture of this holistic approach. They are the trainings in wisdom, in ethical conduct, and in mental discipline. The first training is in wisdom. This is the guiding intelligence of the path, the part that allows us to see clearly. It is the compass and the "You Are Here" star on our map. This training in wisdom consists of 2 factors. The first is right view, or sometimes called right understanding. This is the very foundation of the entire path. It means seeing the world and ourselves as they truly are. It means understanding the 4 noble truths we have just explored, understanding dukkha, its cause and craving, its possible cessation, and the path that leads to that cessation. In the context of our loneliness, right view is the revolutionary shift from seeing loneliness as a personal flaw to seeing it as an impersonal process driven by clinging. It is the clear seeing that liberates us from shame and blame. The second factor of wisdom is right intention, or right thought. Once we have the right view, we must align our heart's intention with that view. Right intention is the conscious choice to cultivate thoughts of letting go rather than clinging, thoughts of kindness rather than aversion, and thoughts of harmlessness rather than cruelty, both toward others and, crucially, toward ourselves. It is the deliberate act of setting our inner compass toward the peaceful shore of nirvana. The second training is in ethical conduct. If wisdom is our way of seeing, ethical conduct is our way of walking. It is how we move through the world and interact with others in a way that is skillful and harmonious. This training comprises three factors. The first is right speech. This is the practice of using our words with conscious care. It means refraining from lying, from divisive speech that sets people against each other, from harsh words that cause pain, and from idle chatter that clutters the mind. For the person struggling with loneliness, this practice begins with the inner voice. It means learning to speak to ourselves with the same kindness and truthfulness we would offer a dear friend, rather than the harsh, critical voice of the inner judge. The next factor is right action. This is the practice of aligning our physical actions with our intention of harmlessness. At its most basic, it means refraining from killing, from stealing, and from sexual misconduct. It is about cultivating a deep respect for the life and well-being of all, which in turn fosters a powerful sense of our own integrity and self-respect, a potent antidote to the feelings of worthlessness that often accompany loneliness. The final factor in this group is right livelihood. This is the extension of right action into our professional lives. It means choosing to earn a living in a way that does not cause harm to others or to the world. It is about finding a way to contribute our talents to the world that feels wholesome and aligned with our deepest values, creating a seamless sense of integrity between our private and public lives. The third and final training is in mental discipline. If wisdom is our guide and ethical conduct is our walk, then mental discipline is the engine, the heart, and lungs that power the entire journey. This is the direct training of the mind itself. It consists of the final three factors. The first is right effort. This is not a forceful, gritting your teeth kind of effort. It is a gentle, balanced, and persistent energy. It is the wise effort to prevent unskillful, negative states of mind, like obsessive loneliness or resentment, from arising. It is the effort to let them go if they have already arisen. At the same time, it is the effort to cultivate skillful, positive states of mind, like kindness, mindfulness, and compassion, and the effort to maintain them when they are present. The next factor is right mindfulness. This is the very heart of the entire practice. Right mindfulness is the capacity to be aware of the present moment exactly as it is, without judgment. It is the practice of paying attention to our breath, to the sensations in our body, to the feelings that arise and pass away, and to the thoughts that move through the mind. It is the practice of learning to be with the feeling of loneliness itself, not as an enemy to be vanquished, but as a temporary cloud in the vast sky of our awareness. The final factor of the path is right concentration. This is the fruit of right mindfulness and right effort. It is the ability of the mind to become steady, unified, and calm. It is the practice of gathering our scattered attention and resting it peacefully on a single point, allowing the turbulent waters of the mind to grow still, revealing the clarity and peace that lie beneath. It is the direct experience of the still lake we spoke of earlier. These 8 factors are a beautiful, integrated system for living a sane, peaceful, and compassionate life. They work together, each one supporting the next. Your right view helps you understand why right speech is important. Your right mindfulness allows you to catch an unkind word before it leaves your lips. Your right effort gives you the strength to choose kindness instead. Your practice of right action and right livelihood brings a sense of peace that makes right concentration easier. It is a continuous, upward spiral that leads away from confusion and toward clarity. This path is not about becoming a perfect person. It is about becoming a skillful person. It is a pragmatic art of happiness, teaching us to discern which thoughts, words, and actions lead to more suffering and which lead to more peace, and then giving us the tools to consistently choose peace. We now have the map. The Noble Eightfold Path is the blueprint for our journey out of the forest of loneliness. And like any journey, we must begin with the first step, which is also the foundation for every other step. That foundation is right view. To see the world clearly, we must understand its fundamental characteristics. And so, the first landmark we must examine on this map, the first great truth of reality we must directly understand, is the truth of impermanence. As we stand at the beginning of the Noble Eightfold Path, our map to the end of suffering, we find that the very first step, the foundation of the entire journey, is right view. It is the wisdom to see things not as we wish they were, not as we fear they are, but exactly as they are. And the most fundamental, inescapable, and universal characteristic of reality, the first great landmark on this map, is the truth of impermanence. In the ancient language of the Buddha, this is called anicca. This is not a uniquely Buddhist idea. It is a truth whispered by every corner of the cosmos, from the slow grind of mountains into sand to the fleeting life of a dragonfly. It is confirmed by modern physics, which shows us that even the most solid-seeming object is a vibrant, seething dance of energy, a process, not a thing. But more importantly, it is confirmed by the intimate experience of our own lives. Think of a cloud you see in the sky. It is born from invisible vapor, it takes on a beautiful and distinct shape for a time, and then it dissolves and disappears back into the vastness of the blue. Or consider a flower in a garden. It begins as a tightly closed bud, slowly opens its petals in a moment of radiant glory, and then, inevitably, it withers, fades, and returns to the earth. Life is a ceaseless rhythm of arising and passing away, of coming and going, of birth and death. Our very own breath is a testament to this law. With every inhalation, there is a beginning. With every exhalation, there is an ending. We are living participants in the constant flowing river of change. The great philosopher Heraclitus said that you can never step into the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. This is the essence of anicca. The universe is in constant, dynamic flow. Yet, deep within the architecture of our minds, there is a profound resistance to this truth. We crave permanence. We seek security, stability, and certainty in a world where none of these things can ultimately be found. We try to build solid ground on the surface of a flowing river. We attempt to grasp the water of life with a clenched fist, only to find it always slipping through our fingers. And it is this very conflict, this struggle between our desire for permanence and the non-negotiable reality of impermanence, that is a primary source of our dukkha, our suffering. This is where the pain of loneliness finds its deepest roots. Let us look closely at how this works. We cling to relationships, we fall in love, we form deep friendships, and we project a future onto them that is static and unchanging. We create a mental snapshot of the relationship in its happiest moment, and we desperately try to make that snapshot our permanent reality. We want the people we love to always be there for us, to never change, to never leave. But people do change. They grow in different directions. Their feelings evolve. They move away. They fall ill. They die. When reality fails to match our fixed, permanent ideal, we suffer intensely. The pain we call loneliness is often not just the absence of a person, but the shattering of our illusion of permanence. We are not just mourning a loss. We are fighting a battle with the fundamental nature of existence, a battle we can never win. We also cling to our feelings. When a pleasant feeling arises, like joy, excitement, or a sense of deep connection with others, we immediately grasp at it. We think, this is it. This is what I want to feel forever. We try to hold on to it, to possess it. But feelings are like the weather. They are inherently transient. The moment we try to freeze a feeling, we introduce a tension, a fear of it ending, which paradoxically pollutes the very joy we are trying to preserve. Then, when the feeling inevitably fades, as all feelings do, we are left with a sense of lack, of emptiness, of something being wrong. We feel lonely again, Conversely, when an unpleasant feeling arises, such as sadness, boredom, or the raw ache of loneliness, we do the opposite. We resist it. We push it away. We tell ourselves, I should not be feeling this. I need to get rid of it. This resistance is also a form of clinging. We are clinging to the idea of a self that should always be happy and free from discomfort. This struggle, this internal war against our own present moment experience, is exhausting. It gives the unwanted feeling more energy, more solidity, more power over us. By fighting impermanence, we turn a fleeting cloud into a solid iron cage. The most powerful story that illustrates the painful struggle against impermanence and the profound liberation that comes from finally accepting it is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. Kisa Gotami lived at the time of the Buddha, and her life was one of profound joy centered on a single person, her infant son. He was her first and only child, and her love for him was absolute. Her entire world, her sense of self, her hope for the future was woven into the fabric of this tiny, precious life. Then, one day, the unimaginable happened. The child fell suddenly ill and died. Kisa Gotami's grief was so immense, so overwhelming, that her mind could not accept the reality of what had happened. She refused to believe her son was dead. Clutching the small, cold body to her chest, she went into a state of desperate denial. She ran from house to house, from neighbor to neighbor, frantically begging for medicine that could cure her son. The villagers looked at her with pity and sorrow. They could see the child was gone, but she could not. Her suffering was not just grief. It was the agony of a mind violently resisting the law of Anika. Finally, seeing her inconsolable state, a compassionate villager suggested she go and see the wise man, who was teaching in a nearby grove, the man they called the Buddha. She ran to him, laid the body of her son at his feet, and pleaded, "Master, can you give me the medicine that will cure my boy?" The Buddha looked at her not with judgment for her delusion, but with boundless compassion for her pain. He saw her suffering, and he knew that a philosophical lecture on impermanence would be meaningless to a heart so shattered by grief. He had to give her a teaching she could discover for herself. He said to her, "Yes, there is a way, but to make the medicine, I need a special ingredient. I need you to go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed from a house where no one, not a parent, not a child, not a spouse, not even a Cervantes ever died." Filled with a surge of desperate hope, Kisa Gotami rushed back to the village. She knocked on the first door. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "I need a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son. Do you have one?" Of course, the woman of the house replied, "We have plenty." As the woman went to get it, Kisa Gotami asked the crucial question, "Has anyone in this house ever died?" The woman's face fell. "Oh, lady," she said softly, "you remind me of my deepest sorrow. My beloved father died here just last year." With a heavy heart, Kisa Gotami declined the seed and went to the next house. The story was the same. A family offered her a mustard seed, but they had lost a sister. The next house had lost a husband. The next had lost their youngest child. She went from door to door to every single house in the village, and the answer was always the same. Every family, without exception, had been touched by death. Every home was a house of mourning. As the day wore on, a profound transformation began to take place within her. The sharp, piercing, personal nature of her own grief began to soften and dissolve into a vast, shared ocean of human sorrow. She started to see that loss was not a unique tragedy inflicted only upon her. It was a universal law, a fundamental part of the human experience that connected her to every single person she met. Her desperate, self-absorbed clinging began to be replaced by a deep and powerful empathy for the suffering of all others. She looked at her son's body no longer with frantic denial, but with a new, sober understanding. She saw that he, like the father in the first house and the sister in the second, had simply followed the natural law of all conditioned things, to arise and then to pass away. She returned to the forest where the Buddha was waiting. He saw her approaching, and he knew she had found the medicine, though her hands were empty. "Have you brought the mustard seed?" he asked gently. She looked at him with clear, calm eyes, her frantic energy gone, replaced by a deep stillness. "Master," she said, "the work is done. I could not find a single house where death has not entered. I see now that I thought my sorrow was mine alone. But the truth is, the dead are far more numerous than the living." In that moment, Kisa Gotami was no longer fighting reality. She had awakened to the truth of Anicca, and in that awakening, she was finally able to gently lay her son's body down and begin her own journey of healing and liberation. This story reveals the profound gift hidden within the difficult truth of impermanence. When we stop fighting it, it becomes our greatest teacher. Embracing Anicca does not mean becoming passive or morbid. It means unlocking a new way of living, a way that is filled with freedom, gratitude, and resilience. When you truly, deeply understand that everything changes, you become less afraid of loss. You know that difficult periods in your life, including the painful seasons of loneliness, are not permanent states. They are weather patterns that will pass. The feeling of loneliness is a heavy, dark cloud, but you are the vast, open sky. The cloud is temporary. The sky is ever present. This understanding gives you the strength to endure difficult emotions without being shattered by them. You can allow them to be there, knowing they will not be there forever. Paradoxically, impermanence is also the key to profound joy and gratitude. When you know that life is fleeting, you stop taking it for granted. You begin to treat each moment as the precious and unrepeatable gift that it is. You listen more deeply in a conversation, knowing it will never happen in exactly the same way again. You savor the taste of your tea, the warmth of the sun on your skin, a moment of quiet peace, because you know it is transient. Impermanence infuses life with a poignancy and a beauty it would not otherwise have. It is the secret ingredient that urges you to be fully present for your own life, because this present moment is the only one you will ever have. The practice, then, is to learn how to dance with the flow of change rather than building a dam to try and stop the river. It is to cultivate a mind that is flexible, adaptable, and open. It is to learn to hold our joys, our sorrows, our relationships, and even our own lives with an open hand rather than a clenched fist. When you hold something in a clenched fist, you are tense and fighting. When you hold it in an open hand, you can appreciate it fully for as long as it is there, and when it is time for it to leave, you can let it go with grace. So we see that everything around us is a manifestation of Anicca, the world, our relationships, our bodies, our thoughts. Even the painful feeling of loneliness is just a temporary visitor, a passing cloud. This realization naturally leads us to a deeper, more personal question. If everything I experience is in a state of constant flux, what about the experiencer? What about the I that is feeling lonely? Is that I a solid, permanent, unchanging entity at the center of all this change? Or is that I also a part of the flowing river, a process, a dance of fleeting moments? This is the next great landmark on our map, the investigation that takes us to the very heart of who we think we are. We have been walking on the path of right view, learning to see reality as it is. Our first step was to stand on the banks of the great river of impermanence, Anicca, and to recognize that everything we experience, from the world around us to our own emotions, is in a state of constant, unrelenting flow. This realization is profound, but it naturally gives rise to an even deeper and more personal question. As we watch this river of change flow by, we must ask, who is the one watching? Who is this I that experiences the joy, the sorrow, the pleasure, and the pain? Who exactly is it that feels so very lonely? The path of wisdom now invites us to turn the lens of our inquiry inward, to search for this self that we take so for granted. This investigation leads us to the second great characteristic of reality, a teaching that is at the very heart of Buddhist thought and is perhaps the most liberating and initially the most challenging of all. This is the truth of anatta. The word is often translated as no self, which can sound frightening, as if it is a negation of our very existence. A more helpful and accurate way to understand it is as not self. The teaching is not asking us to believe that we do not exist. You are clearly here, hearing these words, breathing, thinking, feeling. The teaching is inviting us to investigate how we exist. It suggests that the idea we have of ourselves, the idea of a solid, separate, continuous I at the center of our experience, is a powerful illusion. And it is this illusion that is the ultimate root of our feeling of separation and loneliness. Let us conduct this investigation together. Right now, let us go in search of this I. Where is it to be found? The teaching suggests that what we call a self is, in fact, a dynamic process, a temporary combination of 5 distinct components, known as the 5 aggregates or khandhas. Let's look at each one to see if we can find a permanent I hiding there. First, there is the aggregate of form, our physical body. Is this body you? It seems so at first, but think about it. Your body is in a constant state of flux. The food you ate this morning is becoming you. The air you are breathing is becoming you. Cells are being born and are dying in their trillions every moment. The body you have today is not the same body you had 7 years ago, nor the one you had as a child. It ages, it gets sick, it changes. It is impermanent, just like a cloud. So if your body is always changing, it cannot be a permanent, unchanging I. You have a body, but you are not just your body. Second, there is the aggregate of feeling. Are you your feelings? One moment you feel happy, the next moment you feel sad, then you feel bored, and then a wave of loneliness washes over you. Feelings are like the weather, constantly shifting and changing. If you were your feelings, yourself would die and be reborn countless times a day. You are the one who is aware of the feeling, but you are not the feeling itself. The feeling is a temporary event happening within you, so you are not your feelings. Third, there is the aggregate of perception. This is the part of the mind that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It looks at a color and says red. It hears a sound and says bird. It feels a sensation and says lonely. These perceptions are not pure reality. They are conditioned by our past experiences, our culture, our language, and our personal biases. What one person perceives as beautiful, another perceives as ordinary. Our perceptions are not a solid self. They are a conditioned and unreliable narrator. So, you are not your perceptions. Fourth, there is the aggregate of mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all of our thoughts, opinions, beliefs, memories, habits, and intentions. This is often where we most strongly believe our self resides. But are you your thoughts? A thought arises, stays for a moment, and then vanishes. Where did it come from? Where did it go? You can watch your thoughts as if they are clouds drifting through the sky of your mind. If you can watch them, you cannot be them. Your opinions change, your beliefs evolve. This vast and chaotic stream of mental activity is a process, not a person. So, you are not your mental formations. Finally, there is consciousness itself. This is the simple knowing, the raw awareness of seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling, and thinking. Surely, this must be the I. But the teachings point out that consciousness is not a single, monolithic thing. It is a flickering process that always arises in dependence on other things. Seeing consciousness arises because of the eye and a visible object. Hearing consciousness arises because of the ear and a sound. There is no independent, all-powerful consciousness that exists on its own. It is a dependent, flickering flame, not a permanent, solid core. So we have looked. We have searched through our entire experience, our body, our feelings, our perceptions, our thoughts, and our awareness looking for a permanent, independent owner, a CEO in the corporation of you, and we cannot find one. All we find are these 5 processes, all working together, all impermanent, all interdependent. The I that we thought was in charge was a story, a convenient label, a useful convention, but not an ultimate reality. There is a famous and beautiful dialogue that illustrates this with perfect clarity from a text called The Questions of King Milinda. A wise Buddhist monk named Nagasena was challenged by the brilliant Greek King Milinda. The king, trying to trap the monk in a logical corner, asked him his name. The monk replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was just a designation, a name for a collection of parts, and that no permanent person could be found. The king scoffed at this and used Nagasena's own logic against him, asking, "Well then, who is it that I am speaking to?" Nagasena, instead of arguing, simply changed the subject. He asked the king, "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here today? Did you walk, or did you come in a vehicle?" The king proudly replied, "I came in a chariot." "Excellent," said Nagasena. "Then please, Your Majesty, explain to me what a chariot is. Is it the wheels?" "No, reverend sir," said the king. "Is it, then, the axle?" "Number. Is it the frame, the yoke, the reins, or the whip?" With each question, the king was forced to answer, "Number." Nagasena then smiled and said, "Then, Your Majesty, I can see no chariot. Is chariot just a sound, a meaningless word?" The king was speechless. Nagasena continued, "Chariot is simply a convenient name we give to the skillful assembly of all these parts. When the wheels and the axle and the frame are all present and working together, we use the designation chariot. But there is no separate chariot essence that exists apart from its components. It is empty of an independent self." He then looked at the king with kindness and said, "In the very same way, Your Majesty, Nagasena is just a convenient name for the temporary coming together of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. We look, but we find no permanent self. This insight into anatta, or not self, is the key that unlocks the prison of loneliness. Loneliness is the suffering of a phantom. It is the fear of a fictional character. The I that feels isolated, the I that feels misunderstood, the I that desperately needs validation from others to feel real, is the chariot. It is a useful name for a process, but it is not who you truly are. When you begin to see this, not just as an idea but as a felt reality, the entire architecture of loneliness begins to crumble. If there is no solid, separate self, then who is there to be lonely? Who is there to be cut off from others? The walls of the self begin to feel less like solid concrete and more like translucent curtains. The heavy burden of having to protect, defend, and constantly gratify this fragile I begins to lift. Seeing through the illusion of the separate self does not lead to a cold, meaningless void. It is not the end of the story. In fact, it is the beginning of a far more beautiful and profound one. It is the opening of a door. If we are not this small, isolated, fragile self that we imagined ourselves to be, then what are we? If our being is not a separate noun, but an interconnected verb, what is it connected to? This question dissolves the very foundation of loneliness and leads us directly to the doorstep of one of the most heart-opening truths on this entire path, the sublime reality of our radical, inescapable interconnectedness with all of life. We have taken a courageous step into the heart of our own identity, investigating the nature of the I that feels lonely. Through this inquiry, we discovered the truth of anatta, not self. We discovered that when we search for a solid, separate, unchanging self at the core of our being, we cannot find one. We find only a dynamic, flowing process of body, feelings, thoughts, and consciousness, all interdependent, all impermanent. This discovery can feel like a radical emptying out. The throne at the center of our universe is found to be empty, but this is not a desolate, nihilistic emptiness. It is a spacious, liberating emptiness. It is the clearing of a space for a much more profound and beautiful truth to dawn. This is the truth of our radical interconnectedness. In the Buddhist teachings, this principle is called pratitya samutpada, a long and complex word that simply means dependent origination. It can be summarized in a simple, elegant formula. This is because that is. This is not because that is not. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises in dependence upon other things. The modern Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, gave this profound truth a beautiful and accessible name. He called it inner being. Inner being is the positive expression of anatta. It reveals that because we are empty of a separate, isolated self, we are in fact full of the entire universe. And to understand this is to dismantle the very foundation upon which loneliness is built. Let us explore this together, not as a dry philosophy, but as a living meditation. I invite you to bring to mind a single sheet of paper. It seems like a simple, separate object. But if we look at it with the eyes of interbeing, we can see that it is not separate at all. Look deeply into the sheet of paper and you will see the sunshine. The sunshine is not something separate from the paper because without the sun, the forest could not grow. Without the forest, there would be no tree, and without the tree, there would be no paper. So the sun is in the paper. Now look again, and you will see a cloud. The cloud is floating within the paper because without the cloud, there is no rain. Without the rain, the tree cannot grow. So the cloud is in the paper. If you continue to look, you will see the logger who cut down the tree. You can see his arms, his sweat, his breath, and if you see the logger, you can see his parents who gave him life. You can see the wheat and the bread he ate for breakfast, and the farmer who grew the wheat, and the earth that nourished it. You see the person who manufactured the saw, and the miners who dug the iron ore from the ground. You see the knowledge of the paper maker, the skill of the truck driver who transported the wood, the entire economic and social system that makes the production of a single sheet of paper possible. If you were to remove any one of these elements, the sheet of paper could not exist. If you return the sunshine to the sun, the rain to the cloud, the logger to his parents, the earth to the planet, the paper would vanish. It has no separate, independent self. It enters with everything else in the cosmos. It is empty of a separate self, but it is full of the universe. Now, let us turn this same gentle, deep looking upon ourselves. Let us see our own nature of inner being. Look at your hand. This hand that you call yours is not just yours. In it, you can see your mother and your father. Every cell of your body contains the genetic information they passed on to you. Their hopes, their struggles, and their love are flowing in your very blood. And in your parents, you can see your grandparents and your great-grandparents stretching back in an unbroken chain through thousands of years and countless generations. All of your ancestors are present in you right now. You are their continuation. Look deeply into your body and see the food you ate today. See the sunshine and the rain that nourished the plants or the animals that became your meal. See the farmers, the truck drivers, the grocery store clerks. All of these people are a part of you, sustaining your life in this moment. Now feel the air as you breathe in. This air connects you directly to the trees and the plankton in the ocean that produce the oxygen you need to survive. You are breathing in the sky. You are breathing in the world. Your body is not a sealed container. It is a porous membrane, constantly exchanging itself with the universe. You are a walking, thinking, feeling expression of the sun, the clouds, the earth, and the stars. The eye that feels lonely is a story based on a mistaken perception of separation. It is the delusion of a single wave in the ocean that has forgotten its own nature. The wave rises up, and for a moment it has a unique form. It may look at the other waves and feel separate from them. It may feel small, or large, or afraid of crashing upon the shore. But its entire existence is nothing but the water of the ocean. It is never, for a single instant, separate from the ocean. When it realizes its true nature is water, its fear of being a separate, vulnerable wave disappears. It has not been annihilated. It has simply realized the truth of its being. You are not a separate wave. You are the ocean, manifesting for a little while as a wave. There is another beautiful and ancient metaphor for this truth. It is the image of Indra's net. Imagine a vast cosmic net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single point where the threads of the net cross, there is a single, brilliant, perfectly clear jewel. The net is woven in such a way that if you look closely into the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire infinite net. Each jewel contains all the other jewels. What happens to one affects all. The whole is present in every part. You are one of these jewels. In the depths of your own being, the entire universe is reflected, and you, in turn, are reflected in the heart of every other being. In such a universe, true separation is impossible. To harm another is, in a very real way, to harm oneself. To bring joy to another is to bring joy to the whole net. This is the ultimate answer to the ache of loneliness. Loneliness is born from the illusion that you are a single, isolated jewel, disconnected from the net. It is the pain of the paper, believing it is separate from the sun. It is the fear of the wave, believing it is separate from the ocean. The practice of right view, of seeing interbeing, is the direct antidote to this illusion. When you look at another person, you can practice seeing their ancestors in them, just as you see your ancestors in yourself. When you look at a flower, you can practice seeing the entire cosmos that has conspired to bring it into being. As this understanding deepens from a mere idea into a felt reality, the feeling of loneliness begins to seem absurd, a logical impossibility. How can you be lonely when your body is a museum of your ancestors? How can you be separate when the breath of the world is flowing through you? Who is there to be cut off when your very being is woven from the threads of the entire cosmos? You are not in the universe is in you. This profound insight, this right view of our interconnected reality, is the solid ground upon which all true healing is built. But intellectual understanding, however beautiful, is not enough to transform the deep habits of our mind. We need a way to bring this vast cosmic perspective into the small, intimate moments of our daily lives. We need a tool that allows us to wake up again and again to the truth of our interbeing in the here and now. That tool, the very heart of the practice of living an awakened life, is the seventh factor of the path. It is the practice of mindfulness. We have traveled far on this inner journey, soaring to the vast cosmic perspective of interbeing, realizing that the story of a small, separate self is an illusion. We have seen, with the eyes of wisdom, that we are not separate from the universe, but are a living expression of it. This is the right view that illuminates our path, but understanding, however profound, is like having a map but never taking a step. How do we bring this expansive truth into the felt reality of our lives? How do we experience this interconnectedness, not just as a beautiful idea, but in our bodies, in our hearts, in the very texture of this present moment? The answer lies in the seventh factor of the path, the foundational practice and a profound energy called sati. We know it in the West as mindfulness. Mindfulness is a word we hear often, but it is frequently misunderstood. It is not about emptying your mind or stopping your thoughts, an impossible task that only leads to frustration. It is not about zoning out or achieving a blissful state of detachment. Mindfulness is simpler and more profound than that. It is the energy of being present. It is the gentle, intentional act of paying attention to your experience, right here, right now, without the filter of judgment. It is about changing your relationship to your thoughts and feelings, learning to observe them with a spacious and friendly curiosity, rather than being swept away by them. To understand why this simple practice is so powerful, we must first understand the nature of what we might call the unmindful mind, or the time-traveling mind. When you are feeling the ache of loneliness, where is your mind? If you pay close attention, you will find it is almost never in the present moment. It has traveled to the past, replaying memories of connections that have been lost, relationships that have ended, or happy moments that stand in stark contrast to the present emptiness. This journey into the past generates feelings of sadness, grief, and regret. Or the mind rocket ships into the future, projecting endless scenarios of continued isolation, imagining holidays spent alone, or growing old without companionship. This journey into the future generates anxiety, fear, and despair. The pain of loneliness is a creature that lives in time. It feeds on the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow. The one place it cannot survive is in the simple, unadorned reality of the present moment. So how do we return from these painful journeys in time? We need an anchor. We need something that is always, unfailingly, in the here and now. That anchor is our own breath. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot take a breath that is in the future. Your breath is always happening in this exact moment. It is the most reliable and accessible tool we have for returning home to ourselves. The practice can be as simple as this. Just for a moment, bring your attention to the feeling of the breath as it enters your body. Notice the cool sensation at the tip of the nostrils. Follow the breath as it travels down into your lungs. Feel the gentle rise of your chest or your abdomen. And then follow the breath all the way out again. For those few seconds, you have stepped out of the time machine of your mind. You have arrived in the only moment where life is actually happening. Your mind is like a boat, often tossed about on a stormy sea of thoughts, memories, and worries. The breath is the heavy, steady anchor that you can drop at any time. It doesn't stop the storm, but it holds you firm in the safe harbor of the present, allowing the waves to rise and fall without capsizing your boat. This is the foundation. But how do we apply this practice directly to the painful feeling of loneliness when it arises? Our habitual reaction is one of resistance. The feeling comes, and we immediately tense up. We fight it, we try to reason it away, or we distract ourselves by grabbing our phone, turning on the television, or filling our heads with noise. This resistance is a battle, and it is exhausting. It is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense effort, and the moment you relax, the ball shoots up with even greater force. Mindfulness offers a radically different approach, an approach of gentle courage and compassionate acceptance. Instead of fighting the feeling, we learn to meet it. We can imagine our consciousness as a wide, open, welcoming house. Our feelings are like visitors who come to the door. When a welcome guest like joy or excitement arrives, we swing the door wide open and invite them in for tea. But when an unwelcome visitor like loneliness, fear, or sadness knocks on the door, our habit is to lock the deadbolt, turn off all the lights, and pretend we are not home. The visitor, feeling unheard, just knocks louder and louder. Mindfulness is the practice of being a gracious host to all of our visitors. When loneliness knocks, we can learn to simply open the door. We don't have to love the visitor or invite them to move in forever. We simply acknowledge their presence with a calm and steady gaze. The practice looks like this. The wave of loneliness arises. First, you simply acknowledge it in your mind. Ah, here is the feeling of loneliness. I see you. You greet it. Second, you can mentally name it. Softly, to yourself, you can say, loneliness. Loneliness. This simple act of labeling creates a little bit of space. You are not the loneliness. You are the one who is aware of the loneliness. Third, you can investigate it with gentle curiosity, not with your thinking mind, but with your body. Where does this feeling live in your body? Is it a tightness in your throat? A hollow ache in your chest? A heavy weight in your stomach? By shifting your attention from the overwhelming story of loneliness to the raw physical sensations, you take away its power. It becomes a series of manageable, changing sensations rather than a single, monolithic monster. Finally, you breathe with it. You imagine your breath flowing into and around that area of tightness or hollowness, not to force it to go away, but to hold it with kindness, to give it space, to let it be. This is an act of profound self-compassion. It is you learning to be a friend to yourself, even in your darkest moments. There is a powerful image for this quality of present moment focus. It is the image of a tightrope walker, balanced on a thin wire stretched high above a canyon. The secret to their survival, the secret to their grace, is that their attention is not in the past. They are not thinking about the first step they took onto the platform. Their attention is not in the future. They are not fantasizing about reaching the other side. Their entire being is focused, with absolute precision, on the present moment. They are aware of the feeling of the rope beneath their feet, the subtle shifts in their center of gravity, the gentle breeze on their skin. Their life depends on being fully here, right now. Our life is this tightrope walk. The past is gone. The future is uncertain. The chasm below is the dizzying chaos of our anxieties and regrets. Mindfulness is the practice of bringing our full, undivided attention to the step we are taking with this breath, in this moment. This is where we find our balance. This is where we find our peace. Through the practice of mindfulness, we develop the capacity to be a stable and compassionate presence for our own experience. We stop being a victim of our own mind, tossed about by every passing mood and thought. We become the host of the house, the walker on the wire, the captain of the boat. We learn that we can bear the discomfort of loneliness without being destroyed by it. We learn that it, like all other feelings, is an impermanent cloud passing through the sky of our awareness. This stability, this inner friendship, creates the fertile ground from which all other positive qualities can grow. Now that we have learned how to sit with and accept our difficulties, we can take the next courageous step. We can begin to actively and intentionally cultivate their beautiful opposites. We can learn how to plant, water, and nurture the seeds of warmth, connection, and unconditional friendliness in the garden of our own heart. This is the practice of metta, the practice of loving kindness. Having established a foothold in the present moment through the practice of mindfulness, we have created a space of stable, non-judgmental awareness. We have learned how to be a compassionate witness to our own experience, allowing the stormy clouds of emotion, including loneliness, to pass through the sky of our mind without being completely swept away. This is a profound achievement. We have moved from being a victim of our inner weather to being the calm, spacious sky itself. From this place of newfound stability, we can now take a truly transformative step. We can go beyond simply witnessing our inner world and begin to actively cultivate it. We can learn to intentionally plant and water the seeds of warmth, friendliness, and connection in the fertile soil of our own heart. This is the practice of metta bhavana. The Pali word metta is often translated as loving kindness. It is not the passionate, grasping love of romance, nor is it the conditional affection we might feel for only a select few. Metta is a universal, unconditional friendliness. It is a gentle, steady, benevolent warmth, a sincere wish for the well-being of oneself and all others. It is like the light and warmth of the sun, which shines down on all things without discrimination, on the beautiful flower as well as the humble weed, on the saint as well as the sinner. The word bhavana means development or cultivation. So metta bhavana is the practice of cultivating this warm, friendly heart. It is a skill we can learn, not a magical feeling we either have or don't. Think of your heart as a radio receiver. For much of our lives, it has been tuned to the frequencies of fear, anxiety, self-criticism, and loneliness. The practice of metta is the conscious, gentle turning of the dial, intentionally tuning our own hearts to the frequency of kindness. And where does this radical practice of cultivating kindness begin? Our instinct may be to direct it outward toward others. But the wisdom of this path teaches that the journey must begin in a place that for many of us is the most difficult and neglected territory of all, with ourselves. The first step in metta practice is to learn to offer this unconditional friendliness to your own being. This may feel strange, awkward, selfish, or even impossible at first. We are so conditioned to seek validation from the outside and so practiced in the art of self-criticism that the act of offering kindness to ourselves can feel deeply foreign, but it is the most essential step. You cannot pour water for another from a cup that is empty. You cannot offer the warmth of a fire to someone if the embers of your own heart are cold and gray. Loneliness is almost always accompanied by a harsh inner critic, a voice that whispers corrosive stories. You are alone because you are not interesting enough, not attractive enough, not worthy enough. This voice is the true source of our isolation. It is an inner exile. The practice of metta for oneself is the direct, powerful antidote to this voice. It is the act of becoming your own ally, your own dearest friend. The Buddha himself stated this with profound clarity, saying, "You can search throughout the entire universe for someone who is more deserving of your love and affection than you are yourself, and that person is not to be found anywhere." So let us begin this practice together. Find a comfortable position and gently close your eyes. Allow your body to soften. First, bring to mind the simple intention of kindness. Perhaps you can recall a time when you acted from a place of genuine goodness, or remember the feeling of warmth from a beloved pet, or just the simple warmth of the sun on your skin. Allow that feeling, however faint, to gather in the area of your heart. Now, we will gently and silently repeat a series of phrases directed toward our own being. The power is not in forcing a feeling, but in the sincerity of the intention the gentle repetition. Let's use the classic phrases. Silently to yourself, offer this first wish: may I be safe. This is a wish for safety from outer harm, but even more so from inner harm. Safety from the cruelty of your own self-judgment. May I be safe. Next, gently offer the phrase, may I be healthy. A wish for the well-being of your body and for the health and resilience of your mind. May I be healthy. Now, the phrase, may I be happy. This is not a wish for fleeting pleasure, but for a deep, authentic happiness and contentment that comes from within. May I be happy. And finally, may I live with ease. A wish to move through the world with less struggle, less resistance, with a sense of grace and peace. May I live with ease. Continue to repeat these phrases like a gentle, rhythmic mantra. May I be safe. May I be healthy. May I be happy. May I live with ease. Do not worry if you don't feel a sudden rush of self-love. The practice is like watering a seed. For a long time, you may see nothing on the surface, but with patient, steady watering, something deep within the soil is beginning to germinate. You are learning to speak to yourself in a new language, the language of kindness. Once you have spent some time establishing this foundation of friendliness toward yourself, you can begin to expand the circle of metta. This is how the practice dissolves the walls of loneliness. First, bring to mind a benefactor, someone who has been genuinely kind to you in your life. It could be a teacher, a grandparent, a friend. Hold their image in your mind and heart, and now offer them the same wishes. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease. Notice how the feeling of warmth may flow more easily toward this person. Allow it to do so. After some time, let go of that image and bring to mind a dear friend, someone you love and cherish. Hold them in your heart and radiate these same wishes of goodwill toward them. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be happy. May you live with ease. Feel the connection, the warmth of your friendship. Now, the practice takes a significant step. Let go of your friend's image and bring to mind a neutral person. This might be a cashier at a store you frequent, a person you see on your daily commute, a neighbor you don't know well, someone for whom you feel neither like nor dislike. And to this person, you offer the very same heartfelt wishes. May you be safe, may you be healthy, may you be happy, may you live with ease. This stage is powerful because it begins to break down the artificial barriers our minds create between people who matter to me and people who don't. It helps us recognize the shared humanity in everyone, their own silent wish to be safe and happy, just like us. Eventually, the practice can be extended to include even those with whom we have difficulty. And finally, we expand our awareness in all directions, to all beings without exception. To people in this city, in this country, and all over the world, to animals, to insects, to all living things, we radiate the energy of metta outward, like a lighthouse sending its beam into the night. May all beings be safe. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be happy. May all beings live with ease. Just as the sun does not choose where it shines, we practice developing a heart that offers its warmth without preference, without exclusion. This practice is the direct medicine for loneliness. It works by transforming the inner landscape of your mind. It replaces the cold, isolating voice of the inner critic with a steady, warm voice of unconditional friendship. It makes you feel at home in your own skin. By extending kindness to others, it actively dissolves the feeling of separation and reminds you of your shared connection with all of life. And most profoundly, it shifts your entire orientation from one of lack to one of abundance. You cease to be a lonely person, begging for warmth and connection from the outside world. You become a source of warmth yourself, a radiant center of kindness. This is the shift from powerlessness to profound empowerment. Metta is the development of a heart that is friendly, open, and unafraid. It is the sincere wish for all beings to be happy. But what happens when our open heart encounters not just a neutral situation, but the direct and painful reality of suffering, either in ourselves or in others? A heart that has been softened and strengthened by metta, when it comes into contact with pain, naturally blossoms into an even deeper and more engaged quality. This quality is the heart's response to suffering. It is called karuna. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain. It is active and engaged compassion. We have planted the seed of metta, of loving kindness, in the garden of our heart. We have practiced offering its gentle, unconditional warmth to ourselves and to others, wishing for all beings to be happy and free from harm. This practice softens the soil of our being and opens us up to a new level of friendliness with the world. But what happens when this open heart, cultivated with such care, encounters the sharp and undeniable reality of pain? What is the response of a loving heart when it witnesses suffering? The answer is karuna, compassion. Karuna is the natural blossoming of metta when it comes into contact with dukkha. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain. The word itself suggests this quality. It is often translated as the sorrowful lament of a tender heart. But this is not the weak, paralyzing sorrow of despair. It is a powerful, engaged, and courageous response. If metta is the gentle wish, may you be happy. Karuna is the fierce, resonant prayer, may you be free from suffering. It is the union of a tender heart with a strong back. It does not look down from a place of superiority, which is pity. Pity says, "Oh, you poor thing, I am so glad I am not you," and this creates distance. Karuna stands beside. It says, "I see your pain. I am with you in this. Your suffering touches me." It closes the distance. It is the recognition of our shared vulnerability, our shared humanity. For the person caught in the painful grip of loneliness, the practice of compassion is one of the most powerful and direct paths to liberation. Loneliness, especially when it deepens into self-pity, creates a very small, dark, and suffocating world. It is a room lined with mirrors, where the only thing we can see is our own pain, magnified and reflected back at us endlessly. The soundtrack to this room is a constant looping monologue. Why me? No one has ever felt a pain like mine. My suffering is unique. No one understands. This intense self-focus is the very architecture of the prison cell. The practice of karuna is the act of deliberately, gently, turning our gaze away from the mirrors on the wall and looking out the window at the world. This is not an act of dismissing or invalidating our own pain. Your pain is real, it is valid, it deserves kindness. But the practice of compassion invites us to place our pain in a much larger context. Let us try this now. Gently bring your awareness to the reality that at this very moment, all over the world, there are millions of other beings who are also suffering. Think of someone you know personally who may be struggling with physical illness, with the grief of losing a loved one, with financial anxiety, with family conflict. Allow yourself to gently touch their pain with your awareness. Acknowledge their struggle. Silently, you can offer them the wish. May you be free from your suffering. Now, expand your awareness further. Think of the people in your town, in your city, the quiet struggles happening behind the closed doors of your neighbors, the parent worried about their child, the elderly person who has not had a visitor in weeks, the teenager struggling to find their place in the world. See the vast, hidden ocean of human pain that surrounds you. Expand further still to people in other countries, people facing war, famine, injustice. Think of the suffering of animals, of the planet itself, groaning under the weight of our carelessness. As we engage in this contemplation, something remarkable happens. The tight, constricted energy of my pain begins to soften and expand. Our personal sorrow, without being denied, is seen for what it is, one single drop in the vast ocean of universal suffering. The story of I am the only one is revealed to be a lie. The truth is, we are all in this together. The feeling of being uniquely cursed is replaced by a sense of profound solidarity with all living things. And in this shift, the walls of the prison cell of loneliness begin to dissolve. The focus of our energy makes a monumental pivot. It moves from the self-pitying question, why am I so lonely, to the open-hearted, engaged question, given all this suffering, how can I help? This question, how can I help, is the key that unlocks the door. It moves us from a position of passive victimhood to one of active agency. Even if our help is small, the intention itself transforms our inner world from a desolate wasteland into a garden of possibility. In the great traditions of the East, this boundless energy of compassion is embodied in the archetypal figure of a bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is a being who has reached the brink of full enlightenment, but makes a powerful vow to postpone their own final peace, choosing instead to remain in the world, again and again, until every last being has been liberated from suffering. The most famous of these figures is the Bodhisattva of compassion, known in India as Avalokiteshvara and in other lands as Kwanum or Kannon. The story is told that Avalokiteshvara looked down from a heavenly realm and saw the immense and seemingly endless suffering of the world. A great compassion arose, so powerful that he made a vow to free all beings, and he said, "If I should ever falter or grow weary in this sacred task, may my body be shattered into 1,000 pieces." He then worked for countless ages, alleviating the suffering of beings wherever he could. But the world's pain was like a great ocean, and for every tear he dried, 1,000 more seemed to fall. He began to feel a moment of despair, a flicker of doubt in his ability to fulfill his impossible vow. In that very instant, his vow came true. His body exploded into 1,000 fragments. But the Buddhas and the compassionate forces of the universe, witnessing this ultimate act of love, would not let him perish. They gathered the pieces and lovingly reassembled him, not into his old form, but into a new, even more magnificent one. He was reborn with 1,000 helping hands, and in the palm of each and every hand was an eye of wisdom. This powerful image is not just a myth, it is a map of our own potential. It is a teaching on the nature of true compassion. The 1,000 hands represent skillful, engaged action. Compassion is not a passive feeling, it is a verb. It is the hand that writes a letter to a friend in despair. It is the hand that offers a donation to a worthy cause. It is the hand that prepares a meal for a sick neighbor. It is the hand that simply rests on the shoulder of someone who is grieving, offering silent support. The hands teach us that there are countless creative ways to alleviate suffering in the world, both large and small. And in the palm of each hand is an eye of wisdom. This is a crucial element. Compassion without wisdom can be ineffective or even harmful. This is sometimes called idiot compassion, the blind attempt to fix everything, to give people what they want instead of what they need, to become a doormat, or to burn out by taking on the suffering of the world as your own. The eye of wisdom sees clearly. It understands the causes and conditions of suffering. It knows the limits of one's own ability to help. It knows when the most compassionate action is to speak a hard truth, and when it is to listen in silence. It knows that you cannot carry another person's burden for them, but you can walk beside them and help them find the strength to carry it for themselves. True compassion, karuna, is this perfect marriage of a soft, open heart and a clear, discerning mind. We may not feel like a celestial being with 1,000 arms, but we can practice being a two-handed, two-eyed bodhisattva in our own daily lives. The most powerful, compassionate act available to nearly all of us is the practice of deep, compassionate listening. When someone is in pain, our instinct is often to jump in with advice, solutions, or stories of our own. But more often than not, what a person truly needs is the simple, sacred gift of being heard without judgment. To offer your full, undivided presence to another, to listen not just to their words, but to the feelings behind their words, is to create a space of profound healing and connection. It is to say to them, "You are not alone in this." We can also practice with small, everyday acts of kindness, holding a door open for someone, offering a genuine smile to a stranger, asking the person at the checkout counter how their day is going, and truly meaning it. These actions may seem insignificant, but they are not. They are tiny ruptures in the fabric of social indifference that creates a lonely world. They are small affirmations of our shared humanity. And finally, we must learn to turn this compassionate gaze inward. When we are suffering, when we feel the ache of loneliness, can we offer ourselves this same karuna? Can we listen to our own pain with a non-judgmental ear? Can we hold our own suffering with the same tenderness we would offer a friend. This self-compassion is not selfish. It is the essential foundation for sustainable compassion. Without it, we quickly become depleted and fall into burnout. We must learn to fill our own cup so that we may have something to offer others. Some may think that opening oneself to all the world's suffering would be crushingly sad and lead to weakness, but the opposite is true. True karuna, grounded in wisdom and a sense of interconnectedness, is a source of immense strength and fearlessness. It connects us to a sense of purpose that is far greater than the small, fearful concerns of our ego. The self-pitying loneliness says, I am an empty, powerless victim. The compassionate heart says, I am a source of strength and comfort. I can help. This sense of purpose gives life a profound meaning that can carry us through our own darkest nights. It is the ultimate antidote to the powerlessness and isolation of loneliness. We have now seen how metta is the wish for happiness, and karuna is the compassionate response to suffering. But there is one more sister in this family of heart practices, one that directly addresses the poisons of envy and comparison that fuel so much of our modern discontent. It is the practice of learning to rejoice in the happiness and good fortune of others. This is the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have walked the path of the open heart, learning to meet our own experience with the steady presence of mindfulness. We have cultivated metta, the unconditional friendliness that wishes for all beings to be happy. And we have explored karuna, the courageous compassion that moves towards suffering with the wish to see it healed. We have trained our hearts to be present for both the joys and sorrows of life. Now, we must turn our attention to one of the most subtle and challenging tests for the heart, a challenge that is particularly potent in our modern world. We must learn how to respond to the happiness and good fortune of others. This is the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. In our hyper-connected age, we are constantly swimming in a sea of information about the lives of others. Our phones present us with a curated, endless stream of highlight reels, perfect vacations, smiling new couples, career promotions, beautiful homes, and happy families. While this technology promises connection, it often delivers a subtle poison. This is the poison of comparison. As we scroll, a silent, often unconscious process begins. We measure our own messy, complicated, behind-the-scenes reality against the polished, public successes of others. And in this comparison, a painful feeling of lack almost inevitably arises. A voice in the mind whispers, "Their life is so much better than mine. Why don't I have that? What am I doing wrong?" This gives rise to the painful emotion of envy, a feeling that is a mixture of desire for what another has and a subtle resentment that they have it. This process of comparison and envy is a powerful engine for loneliness. It constructs a world based on a narrative of scarcity. The mind begins to operate from the false assumption that happiness, success, and love are limited resources, like slices of a single pie. If someone else gets a large slice, it feels as though there is less available for us. This puts us in a state of constant, low-grade competition with everyone around us. It builds invisible walls of resentment and separation. It reinforces the painful feeling of being on the outside, of being left behind, of not being enough. It is a self-imposed exile, trapping us in the small, impoverished kingdom of our own ego's perceived deficiencies. The practice of mudita is the direct and radical antidote to this poison. It is a declaration of war against the scarcity mindset. Mudita is sympathetic or appreciative joy. It is the genuine, wholehearted ability to feel happy for the happiness of others. It is the capacity to celebrate the success and good fortune of another person as if it were your own. It is a profound recognition that joy is not a limited commodity. Joy is infinite. It is not a pie to be divided, but a light to be shared. The most beautiful metaphor for mudita is that of a single candle flame. One candle can be used to light 1,000 other candles, and its own light is not diminished in any way. In fact, by lighting the other candles, the total amount of light in the room increases exponentially, and the original candle now finds itself in a much brighter and warmer space. Your joy is like the flame of that candle. To celebrate the joy of another, to feel happiness for their good fortune, does not take away from your own potential for happiness. It multiplies the total amount of joy available in the world, and it allows your own heart to bask in that shared light. This is why mudita is considered one of the 4 sublime states, or divine abodes. It is a way of living that is spacious, generous, and deeply connected. It is, for many, the most difficult of these 4 states to cultivate, because it strikes directly at the heart of the ego, which loves to compare, to compete, and to see itself as special. Like the other heart practices, mudita is a skill that can be developed through patient cultivation. The practice begins, as always, in the quiet laboratory of our own mind. I invite you to try this now. Gently close your eyes and find a sense of ease in your body. First, bring to mind someone you love dearly, someone whose happiness is easy for you to feel. Perhaps a close friend, a child, a beloved family member. Picture them in a moment of genuine joy or success. Maybe your friend just received a promotion they worked so hard for. Maybe your child is laughing with pure, uninhibited delight. Maybe a loved one has just recovered from an illness. Hold that image and that feeling of their happiness in your heart. Now, instead of letting the mind's habit of comparison kick in, why didn't I get a promotion? You consciously choose a different path. You offer them phrases of sympathetic joy. Silently from your heart, you can say to them, I am so happy that you are happy. Let yourself feel the sincerity of that statement. May your joy and your good fortune continue. May they increase. As you repeat these phrases, notice what happens in your own body, in your own heart. Is there a flicker of warmth? A slight smile on your lips? A feeling of lightness? Even the smallest positive resonance is the seed of mudita taking root. You are training your mind to find its own happiness in the happiness of others. As the practice strengthens, you can expand the circle. You might see a couple laughing together in a park. Instead of feeling a pang of loneliness, you can silently offer them mudita. How wonderful! May your happiness continue. You might hear of a colleague's success. Instead of feeling the sting of envy, you can take a breath and practice celebrating their achievement. I am happy for your success. This is not always easy. The habit of comparison is strong. The greatest challenge, and the most liberating practice, is to try and offer a moment of mudita to someone whose success you actively envy. This is an act of heroic courage for the heart. You first acknowledge the painful feeling of envy with mindfulness. Ah, envy is present. You feel its tightness, its bitterness. You hold it with kindness. Then, you gently try to pivot, even just for a second. You acknowledge their achievement and offer a small, sincere wish for their well-being. This act does not benefit them as much as it benefits you. It is the act of releasing yourself from the self-inflicted torture of envy. It is you choosing freedom over the prison of resentment. This practice systematically dismantles the structure of loneliness. Envy and comparison build walls. They put us in a constant state of adversarial separation. Mudita dissolves these walls. When you can feel happy for someone, you are no longer separate from them. You are connected to them, participating in their joy. The world is no longer a collection of competitors to be feared, but a vast community of beings whose joys you are invited to share. Your own potential for happiness is no longer limited to the rare and fleeting moments of your own personal triumphs. It expands to encompass the triumphs of everyone you know and even everyone you see. The amount of joy available to you becomes limitless. The world becomes a fundamentally friendlier, more abundant, and less lonely place. We have now explored the great purifiers of the heart, the unconditional friendliness of metta, the engaged compassion of karuna, and the celebratory joy of mudita. These practices, grounded in the stability of mindfulness, create a heart that is resilient, open, kind, and profoundly connected. They prepare the soil. They create the ideal inner environment for the deepest seeds of wisdom to sprout. With a mind that is now more stable and a heart that is now warmer and more spacious, we are ready to take our inquiry to the next level. We are ready to look into the very nature of reality itself, to explore the teaching that lies at the radiant center of the path, the insight that is said to bring about the ultimate and unshakable freedom from all suffering. We are now ready to explore the profound and liberating truth of emptiness. We have now tended to the heart. With the practices of loving kindness, compassion, and sympathetic joy, we have created an inner atmosphere of warmth and resilience. This cultivation of the heart gives us the stability and courage needed to sharpen the eye of wisdom to its finest point, to look directly into the fundamental nature of reality itself. This is the journey into the profound teaching that lies at the radiant center of the path, the insight that unties the final knot of suffering. We are now entering the silent realm of shunyata, or emptiness. Let us be very clear from the outset, because this single word, emptiness, has caused more misunderstanding than perhaps any other in spiritual philosophy. To the ear accustomed to Western thought, the word can sound terrifying. It can conjure images of a cold, dark, meaningless void. It can sound like nihilism, the belief that nothing matters and life has no purpose. It can feel like a threat, the negation of all that we hold dear. But the Buddhist understanding of emptiness is the absolute opposite of this. It is not a bleak absence, but a vibrant, luminous, and dynamic potentiality. It is not the denial of life, but the very condition that makes life, in all its richness and creativity, possible. To grasp this, consider the invention of the number zero. Before the concept of zero existed, mathematics was clumsy and limited. The introduction of zero was not the introduction of nothing. It was the introduction of a placeholder of immense power, a concept that allowed the entire system of numbers to function, enabling everything from simple arithmetic to advanced calculus. Zero represents pure potential. Emptiness, or shunyata, is like the zero of existence. It is not a depressing void, but the fertile ground of pure possibility from which all forms arise. Or, think of a movie screen. While you are engrossed in a thrilling film, you are completely unaware of the screen itself. You see the heroes, the villains, the dramatic landscapes, the tender love scenes. None of these images truly exist on the screen, yet the screen is what allows all of them to appear. The screen is empty of any one particular image, and it is precisely because of this emptiness that it has the capacity to hold every possible image. Emptiness is this radical openness, this limitless capacity. So what then are things empty of? This is the crucial question. Emptiness is not a standalone quality, it is a relational one. Things are not just empty. They are empty of one specific, illusory quality. They are empty of a separate, solid, independent, unchanging self or essence. This is the culmination of the insights we have already explored. We have already seen the evidence for this everywhere we have looked. We saw the truth of anicca, impermanence, recognizing that because all things are constantly changing, flowing, and evolving, none of them can possess a permanent, fixed essence. If a thing had a solid, unchanging essence, it could not change. We saw the truth of anatta, not self, when we looked for a permanent CEO within our own being and found only the 5 shifting aggregates of body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. We found that our own self is empty of a central, independent owner, and we saw this most clearly in the truth of inner being, pratitya samutpada. We saw that the sheet of paper is made entirely of non-paper elements, the sun, the cloud, the forest, the logger. It is completely empty of a separate paper self. Emptiness is simply the ultimate extension of this principle to all of reality. Everything, without exception, is empty of a standalone, separate existence. Let us make this even more practical with a simple metaphor. Consider a cup. What is it that makes a cup useful? Is it the ceramic material? Is it the handle? Is it the beautiful glaze on its surface? Number, the essential quality of a cup, its very cupness, is the emptiness inside it. It is the empty space, defined by the walls of the cup, that makes it useful. It is this emptiness that allows the cup to fulfill its function, which is to hold and offer a drink. If the cup were a solid block of clay, if it were full of itself, it would be completely useless as a cup. Its function is born from its emptiness. This is a profound metaphor for our own lives. A mind that is full of its own fixed opinions, prejudices, judgments, regrets, and anxieties is a useless mind. It has no space to receive new ideas, no capacity to learn, no room for creativity to blossom. It is closed and rigid. But a mind that is empty in the Buddhist sense, empty of rigid views, empty of obsessive self-concern, empty of preconceived notions, a mind that is open, receptive, flexible, and alive with potential. This is the beginner's mind that is capable of seeing the world with fresh eyes. This is the mind of a true artist, scientist, or innovator. In the same way, a heart that is full of selfish desire has no room for true love. A life that is full of busyness and distraction has no space for peace. The creative and functional power of our lives, just like the power of the cup, comes directly from a quality of spaciousness, of openness, of emptiness. This brings us to the most famous and most paradoxical teaching on this subject, a single line from the Great Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. Let us unpack this with care. The first part, form is emptiness, is exactly what we have been exploring. Form here means anything that can be perceived. A tree, a thought, a planet, a feeling of loneliness, your own body. This part of the teaching says that if you look deeply into any form, you will discover that its fundamental nature is emptiness. That is, it is empty of a separate, independent self. When we looked deeply into the form of the wave, we found it was empty of a wave self, and its true nature was water. When we looked deeply into the form of the chariot, we found it was empty of a chariot self. This is the deconstructive power of wisdom. It breaks down our fixed ideas about the world and reveals the fluid, interdependent reality underneath. But the second part of the line is just as important. Emptiness is form. This prevents us from falling into the trap of thinking that emptiness is some separate, cold, otherworldly void that we are supposed to discover by rejecting the world. This is not true. Emptiness is not somewhere else. It is right here, manifesting as the vibrant, colorful, dynamic world of form. The only way we can experience the emptiness of the cup is through the physical form of the clay that defines it. The only way we experience the truth of the water is through the tangible form of the wave. Emptiness and form are not two different things. They are like two sides of a single coin, an inseparable dance. The world of form is the expression of emptiness. Emptiness is the nature of the world of form. This is the ultimate healing insight. It means that freedom is not to be found by escaping the world, but by seeing the world and ourselves more deeply. The goal is not to transcend life to find a blank nothingness. The goal is to see the empty, interconnected, and therefore sacred and precious nature of this very life, this very moment, this very feeling. This understanding dissolves fear at its root. Emptiness is not a threat to life. It is the very condition that allows life to be. A universe that was not empty would be solid, frozen, static, and dead. Because the universe is empty, it is fluid, creative, and alive. Because you are empty of a fixed self, you have the capacity to grow, to change, to love, and to awaken. So, the silent realm of emptiness is not a destination you travel to. It is the profound inner silence that you discover when the noisy, chattering ego, the part of you that is obsessed with defending and defining a separate self, finally relaxes. It is the peace that arises when you stop clinging to illusions. When the mind is no longer frantically trying to fill a perceived inner void, it can finally rest in its own natural, spacious fullness. And the fear of being alone, of being empty of companionship, is completely transformed. How can you be truly alone when your very nature is interwoven with the sun, the clouds, and all your ancestors? The emptiness we once feared as a lack turns out to be a profound and radiant fullness we had never dared to imagine. It is the realization that we were never broken, never incomplete, and never truly separate. We have seen that form is revealed to be emptiness. We have deconstructed the illusion of the solid, separate thing. But we have also seen that emptiness continuously gives birth to form. So, How does this profound truth of emptiness relate to the beautiful, heart-opening truth of inner being that we explored earlier? How does the empty nature of all things allow for the intricate and sacred dance of life to unfold? We must now look at how these two sides of reality, emptiness and interconnectedness, are not just related, but are, in fact, one and the same truth. Seen from two different angles, we stand now at a great confluence, a place where two profound streams of wisdom meet and merge into a single, mighty river. On one side, we have explored the truth of emptiness, shunyata, the teaching that all things are empty of a solid, separate, independent self. This can feel like a process of deconstruction, of taking things apart. On the other side, we have explored the truth of interbeing, pratityasamutpada, the teaching that all things are radically interconnected, that everything contains everything else. This feels like a process of connection, of putting things together. On the surface, they may seem like opposites, emptiness and fullness, but the deepest insight of this path reveals that they are not opposites. They are not even two different things. They are two ways of describing the same, single, magnificent reality. Emptiness is the ground of inner being. Inner being is the living expression of emptiness. Let us state the core of this insight as clearly as possible. It is precisely because things are empty of a separate self that they can connect and interexist with everything else. If things were not empty, if they were solid, self-contained, and truly separate, no connection would be possible. Emptiness is not a void. It is the open gateway that allows the universe to be a dynamic, flowing, interconnected whole. Let us revisit our trusted examples through this new, unified lens. We looked at the chariot of King Melinda. We saw that the chariot is empty of any separate, intrinsic chariot essence. It is just a name for a collection of parts. Now we can see the other side. It is because the chariot is empty of a solid self that it can be composed of the non-chariot elements of wheels, an axle, a frame, and reins. If it were already full of some permanent chariot self, there would be no room for the wheels or the axle to be a part of it. Its emptiness of a separate self is the very reason for its existence as an interconnected whole. Its emptiness and its interconnectedness are the same reality. We looked deeply into a sheet of paper and saw that it was empty of an independent paper self. Now we see that it is because of this emptiness that the paper can be full of the sun, the cloud, the rain, and the logger. Its emptiness is its capacity to contain the entire cosmos. If the paper possessed a solid, separate self, it would be disconnected from the sun and the rain, and it could not exist. Emptiness is not what the paper lacks. Emptiness is what allows the paper to be. Now, let us apply this to ourselves. We have seen the truth of anatta, that we are empty of a fixed, unchanging, separate self. This is not a frightening deficiency. It is our greatest grace. It is because you are empty of a solid, sealed-off self that you can exist at all. It is because of this emptiness that you can be filled with your parents and your ancestors. It is because of this emptiness that you can take in the non-you elements of food, water, and air and transform them into the living energy of your body. If you were truly separate from the world, you could not breathe, you could not eat, you could not connect, you could not love, you would not be alive. Your emptiness is your radical, intimate, and inescapable connection to the web of life. The idea of a separate self is the illusion. The truth is boundless, empty, and interconnected presence. The most powerful metaphor to grasp this unity of emptiness and form, of self and other, is the relationship between the wave and the water. Imagine yourself as a wave on the surface of the ocean. From the wave's limited point of view, it has a distinct identity. It has a birth as it rises from the sea, a life as it travels across the surface, and a death as it crashes on the shore. It has a particular height, a particular shape, a particular speed. It can look at other waves and compare itself to them. It can feel high and mighty or small and insignificant. It can feel alone, a separate traveler on a vast and indifferent sea. This is the conventional reality, the reality of the separate self, and it is a reality filled with fear, especially the fear of its own end. But this wave, if it becomes wise, can practice looking deeply into its own nature. It can ask itself, what am I truly made of? And if it looks deeply enough, it will discover that it is made of water. It will realize that wave is just a temporary form, a beautiful and dynamic activity that the water is doing. The wave is never for a single moment separate from the water. Its rising is the ocean rising. Its falling is the ocean falling. Now, let us apply our ultimate truths. Is the wave empty? Yes. It is completely empty of a separate wave self. Its entire substance is water. This form is emptiness. And is the water real? Yes, it expresses itself, manifests itself as the living, moving form of the wave. This is emptiness, is form. Now for the final, liberating insight. What allows all the waves to be connected? What allows the energy of a storm to pass through all of them? What allows them to share the same qualities of wetness and saltiness? It is precisely their shared nature as water. It is because each wave is empty of a separate self that they can all interbe as one ocean. The emptiness is the very basis of their interconnectedness. The truth of the water is at once the truth of their emptiness and the truth of their profound and unbreakable union. This is the peak of Buddhist wisdom, the view from the highest mountaintop. The ache of loneliness is the suffering of the wave that has forgotten it is water. It is a suffering born from a mistaken identity. When you feel lonely, you are a wave believing in its own separation, afraid of its own fragile form. The practice is to look deeply and recognize your true nature as the entire ocean. How can the ocean feel lonely? It contains every single wave. It embraces the shores of every continent. It holds the reflection of the sun, the moon, and the infinite stars. It is the womb of all life. To realize your nature as emptiness is to realize your nature as this great fullness, this boundless ocean of being. The word shunyata can be translated not just as emptiness, but also as spaciousness, openness, or receptivity. It is not the emptiness of a vacuum, but the emptiness of an open sky that has room for the sun, the moon, and all the clouds. It is the emptiness of an open heart that has room for all the joys and sorrows of the world. The search for connection, the desperate attempt to fill our inner void with something or someone from the outside, comes to an end. It ends not because we have finally found the perfect thing to fill us up, but because we have realized we were never empty in that way to begin with. We were never a separate, broken fragment. We were, and always have been, the whole. We have now reached the summit of right view. We have seen that the universe is not a collection of separate things, but a seamless, sacred, and interconnected dance. Emptiness is not a void to be feared, but the very nature of reality that makes love, community, and life itself possible. How does this sublime understanding, this cosmic perspective, actually change our day-to-day experience of being alone in our room? How do we bring this truth down from the mountaintop and into our quiet living rooms, our moments of solitude? We must now explore how this ultimate wisdom transforms the painful state of loneliness into the peaceful and sacred state of being alone. We have now stood upon the summit of wisdom and have seen the world in a new and luminous light. We have seen that the universe is not a collection of separate, solid things, but a single, seamless, and sacred dance. We have discovered the truth of emptiness, realizing that all things are empty of a separate self, and we have discovered the truth of interbeing, realizing that because of this emptiness, all things are profoundly interconnected. We have seen that the wave is empty of a separate identity and therefore is one with the entire ocean. But now we must ask the most practical question of all. What does this mean for me, sitting here alone in my room? How does this cosmic perspective change the intimate feeling of being by myself? This is where this profound wisdom becomes a lived and liberating reality. It is what allows us to make the great inner shift from painful loneliness to peaceful, joyful solitude. To appreciate the depth of this transformation, we must first look again at the inner landscape of loneliness. Before the dawn of wisdom, the state of being alone is experienced as a lack. It is empty in the negative sense of the word. The self is perceived as a small, fragile, incomplete fragment, a broken piece of a puzzle, desperately searching for another piece to feel whole. To be alone is to be confronted with this painful sense of incompletion, this inner void. The mind in this state is frantic and noisy. It is like a frightened animal trapped in a small cage. It paces back and forth, consumed by the ghosts of the past lost loves, missed opportunities, happy memories that now only bring pain, and it is terrified by the phantoms of the future, the fear of lifelong isolation, of being forgotten, of dying alone. In this state, silence is not peaceful. The outer silence of a quiet room only makes the inner noise louder. It amplifies the roar of our own unmet cravings, our tanha. The silence is filled with the deafening sound of our own neediness, and so we run. We run to the phone, to the television, to the endless scroll of social media, to any distraction that can drown out the terrible noise of our own restless heart. Being alone feels like being abandoned in a cold, dark, messy room, and we will do anything to escape it. Now, witness the transformation that wisdom brings. The state of being alone is no longer experienced as a lack, but as a profound and nourishing spaciousness. It is empty in the way a cup is empty full of potential. It is empty in the way the sky is empty with enough room to hold the entire universe. This is the state of solitude, or what we can call peaceful aloneness. The shift happens because our very definition of self has changed. Because we have seen through the illusion of the separate self, anatta, we no longer feel like a broken fragment searching for a missing piece. We have realized we were never broken to begin with. The wave has realized it is the ocean. How can the ocean be incomplete? How can the sky feel like it's missing a cloud? When the delusion of being a small, needy self dissolves, the frantic search for something outside to complete us simply ends. We find a sense of wholeness that is not dependent on anyone or anything else. Because we understand the truth of inner being, being physically alone no longer means being disconnected. On the contrary, it becomes an opportunity for a deeper, more subtle form of connection. Sitting quietly in a room, we can now feel our profound intimacy with everything. We can feel the air entering our body, a gift from the trees and the sky. We can feel the pull of gravity, our connection to the earth. We can hear the sounds of the world outside the window, a passing car, a distant siren, the song of a bird, and recognize them not as interruptions, but as expressions of the vast web of life to which we belong. We feel the presence of our ancestors in our DNA, in the very shape of our hands. Being physically alone becomes the perfect condition to experience our connection with all that is. In this state of solitude, silence is no longer a threat. It is a gift. The frantic inner roar of craving has subsided. The mind is no longer a noisy, frightening place. Now, in the outer silence, we can begin to hear the more subtle, more beautiful sounds. We can hear the rhythm of our own breath. We can hear the steady, faithful beating of our own heart. We can feel the quiet hum of life itself. The silence is no longer an emptiness to be feared, but a fullness to be savored. It is a space of deep listening, of rest, and of clarity. We can return to our metaphor of the room. The state of loneliness was like being trapped in a cold, cluttered, and abandoned room, filled with the ghosts of yesterday and the anxieties of tomorrow. We would do anything to escape it. But the state of solitude, born from wisdom, is like entering a clean, simple, minimalist Zen sanctuary. The clutter has been cleared away. The room is spacious, full of light, and profoundly peaceful. It is not empty in a negative way. Its very spaciousness is what makes it beautiful and serene. This is a room we no longer wish to escape. It is a sanctuary we learn to seek out. It is our refuge, our inner home, a place of profound peace that we can carry with us wherever we go. This inner transformation has a powerful effect on our relationships with other people. When we are no longer terrified of being alone, we can enter into relationships with a new sense of freedom and authenticity. We stop using other people as a drug to numb our own inner pain. We no longer cling to them out of a desperate fear of our own company. This releases both them and us from an impossible burden. We can now be with others simply for the joy of their presence, not because we need them to validate our existence. We can offer them our love from a place of fullness, not from a place of lack. And this, paradoxically, makes us far more loving and attractive companions. Furthermore, this inner freedom gives us the strength to walk away from relationships that are unhealthy or harmful. Our sense of well-being is no longer held hostage by the need to be in a partnership or to be accepted by a group at any cost. We have found the source of peace within ourselves. We have found our true home. This is the great fruit of wisdom. It does not change the external facts of your life. You may still live alone, you may still spend evenings by yourself, but it completely transforms your inner experience of those facts. It turns the prison of loneliness into the sanctuary of solitude. It allows you to discover a profound wholeness and connection that is your birthright. The silence that you once fled from becomes your greatest friend, your wisest teacher, and the source of your deepest peace. This beautiful state of peaceful solitude is the natural expression of a mind that sees reality clearly. Yet, we are creatures of habit. Even with this new understanding, the old patterns of the mind can still arise. The ghost of past attachments, the shadow of future fears, the habitual need for external approval, these can still whisper to us and try to pull us back into the old, familiar room of loneliness. To truly inhabit this new landscape of freedom, we must become skilled in the art of actively releasing these old patterns. We must learn how to gently and lovingly let go of that which no longer serves us. Having arrived at the inner sanctuary of peaceful solitude, a space of wholeness and connection with the cosmos, we may find that our peace is still fragile. We have discovered the clean, well-lit room within, but we may also find that we have dragged old, heavy luggage in with us. Ghosts from the past and fears of the future can still appear, disturbing our newfound tranquility. The wisdom that reveals our true nature must be paired with a practical skill, an art form that allows us to maintain the beauty of our inner home. This is the art of letting go. In the Buddhist teachings, this practice is known as nekkhamma, a word that is often translated as renunciation or relinquishment. This can sound harsh, as if it means giving up all the pleasures of life. But this is a misunderstanding. The art of letting go is not about renouncing joy, it is about renouncing the causes of suffering. It is the wise and compassionate decision to release our grip on the thoughts, emotions, and attachments that create our own pain. Much of our suffering in life comes from walking around with our fists tightly clenched. We clench around past hurts, around idealized images of the future, around our rigid opinions, around our need for other people's approval. This constant clenching is tense, draining, and exhausting. Letting go is the simple, profound, and deeply relieving act of uncurling the fingers and opening the hand. It is not an act of weakness or indifference. It is an act of supreme strength and self-compassion. It is realizing that the thing you are clinging to so desperately is a burning piece of coal, and that letting go is simply the intelligent act of saving yourself from being burned. So what is it that we must learn to let go of in order to heal the ache of loneliness? The first and perhaps most common burden is our collection of idealized futures and fantasies of perfect relationships. In our minds, we write beautiful scripts. We create the character of the perfect partner who will understand our every thought and meet our every need. We imagine the perfect friendship circle that will be free of conflict and misunderstanding. We then try to force the real, complex, messy, and imperfect human beings in our lives to play these fictional roles. When they inevitably fail to follow our scriptas, they always will feel a deep sense of disappointment, betrayal, and loneliness. We think the problem is them, but the problem is the script. Letting go means courageously burning that script. It means releasing the fantasy so that we can be present with the reality. It means learning to meet people where they are, in all their beautiful imperfection, and to love them for who they are, not for who we want them to be. The second great burden we carry is the weight of our past hurts. Our memory is littered with old wounds, the rejection, the abandonment, the betrayal, the unkind word. We carry these events with us like heavy stones in a backpack. We polish them with our attention, replaying the scenes over and over in our minds, keeping the pain fresh. We then use these very stones to build the walls of our own prison, the walls that keep others out and keep us trapped in our own isolation. We identify with the wounds, thinking I am the person who was hurt. Letting go of past hurts does not mean condoning the actions of others or pretending that the pain didn't happen. It is an act of profound self-love. It is the recognition that by continuing to carry the resentment, the only person we are truly poisoning is ourselves. Letting go is deciding that you are no longer willing to drink that poison just because someone else offered it to you years ago. It is putting down the heavy stones, not for them, but for you. The third burden is the relentless need for approval and understanding from others. So much of our anxiety comes from this deep desire for the world to get us, to validate our choices, to approve of our life. This turns our life into an exhausting performance. We become a chameleon, changing our colors to match the expectations of our parents, our friends, our society. This is an incredibly lonely way to live because we end up feeling that no one knows the real us, and perhaps we don't even know ourselves. Letting go, in this context, is the practice of finding our sense of worth and validation from within. It is learning to trust our own inner compass, to honor our own authentic feelings, and to have the courage to be who we are, even if others don't understand or agree. It is the unhooking of our well-being from the unpredictable and uncontrollable opinions of others. This is the path to true integrity and inner freedom. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly illustrates the nature of clinging and letting go. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long pilgrimage. Their monastic vows included a strict rule against making physical contact with women. After walking for many hours, they came to a river with a strong current. A beautiful young woman was standing on the bank, dressed in fine silks, clearly distressed and afraid to cross for fear of ruining her clothes and being swept away. The junior monk, a stickler for the rules, immediately looked away and walked past her. But the senior monk saw her predicament. Without a word, he walked up to her, hoisted her onto his shoulders, and carried her across the turbulent river. He set her down gently on the other side, bowed, and then continued his journey. The junior monk was aghast. He was utterly scandalized by what he had just witnessed. For the next several hours, he walked behind his master in a storm of silent, furious judgment. His mind was racing. He broke our most sacred vow. How could he do that? He is supposed to be my teacher. What a hypocrite. His mind replayed the scene of the monk lifting the woman over and over again, each time adding another layer of righteous indignation. Finally, miles down the road, he could not contain his agitation any longer. He rushed up to the senior monk and burst out, "Brother, I must ask you, why did you do that back there? You know we are forbidden to touch a woman, yet you lifted her up and carried her across the river." The senior monk looked at his agitated companion with eyes full of deep peace and compassion. He smiled gently and said, "Brother, I left that woman by the riverbank hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is a mirror for our own minds. We are almost always the junior monk. An event happens, someone says something, a relationship ends, and long after the event is over, we are still carrying it. We carry the memory, the judgment, the resentment, the grief. Our loneliness is often the heavy state of carrying the ghosts of all the people we feel have abandoned us. Letting go is the practice of becoming the senior monk. It is the practice of leaving the woman at the riverbank. It is the art of allowing life's experiences to pass through us without clinging to them. So how do we practice this? How do we learn to open the clenched fist? One of the most effective methods is a simple visualization. I invite you to imagine yourself sitting peacefully on the bank of a beautiful, gently flowing stream. The water is clear and the sun is warm. You can see leaves of all shapes and sizes floating on the surface of the water, carried along by the current. Now, turn your attention inward to the flow of your own mind. As a thought, a feeling, or a memory arises, particularly one you have been clinging to, I want you to imagine placing it gently onto one of the leaves. If an old memory of a painful breakup arises, place the memory on a leaf and watch it float by. If the feeling of loneliness itself arises, see the word loneliness on a leaf and watch it drift away. If a worry about the future appears, place it on a leaf and let it go. The goal here is not to push the thoughts away or to empty your mind. It is to change your relationship to your thoughts. You are not trying to stop the stream. You are simply choosing not to jump into the water and get swept away. You are the calm, steady observer on the bank. You are practicing the gentle, non-violent act of non-attachment. You let the thoughts and feelings come, and you let them go. You are training the mind, moment by moment, in the art of release. This is the art of letting go. It is not a dramatic one-time event, but a quiet, continuous practice of unburdening ourselves. It is the choice to travel light through this life. By releasing the heavy baggage of idealized futures, past grievances, and the need for approval, we clear out the inner space of our lives. We stop filling our beautiful, peaceful inner sanctuary with clutter. We make room for the present moment. We make room for joy. We make room for peace. We make ourselves free. This profound inner work is the heart of the path. It is a journey you must ultimately walk for yourself within the solitude of your own being. However, this does not mean you must walk it entirely alone. The Buddha understood that while our liberation is our own to realize, the journey is made immeasurably easier, richer, and more joyful when we walk alongside trusted friends and companions on the same path. This wise and supportive community is a crucial element of the journey. It is known as the Sangha. We have journeyed far into the inner landscape, exploring the nature of our own mind, cultivating the heart, and learning the gentle art of letting go. This is the core of the path, a profound and personal exploration that we must ultimately undertake for ourselves. No one else can walk this path for us. No one else can see with our eyes or feel with our heart. In this sense, the journey to liberation is one of supreme self-reliance. And yet, this path contains a beautiful and essential paradox. While the work is our own, we are not meant to do it alone. The wisdom of the path has always recognized that the solitary inner journey is made immeasurably safer, richer, and more joyful when it is supported by the presence of trusted friends and companions. In the Buddhist tradition, a seeker formally begins their journey by taking refuge in what are called the three jewels, the three precious pillars that can support a life of awakening. The first is the Buddha, the principle of awakened potential that exists within all beings. The second is the Dharma, the teachings and the path of truth itself. And the third, considered equal in importance to the other two, is the Sangha, the community of fellow practitioners. The Sangha is the living, breathing context in which the Dharma comes alive. It is the boat that carries us across the turbulent waters of confusion. It is the human expression of the principle of interbeing, a tangible refuge from the illusion of separation. When we hear the word community or group, especially in a spiritual context, a certain wariness may arise. Many of us have been hurt by institutions or feel hesitant to join anything that seems organized or dogmatic. It is important to understand that the concept of Sangha, in its deepest sense, is far more flexible and inclusive than a formal organization. A Sangha is any group of people of any size who gather together with a shared intention, the intention to practice mindfulness, to cultivate compassion, and to support one another in the journey toward freedom. A Sangha could be a weekly meditation group that meets in a quiet room at a local community center. It could be a book club dedicated to studying and discussing spiritual texts with honesty and openness. In our modern world, a Sangha can even be a well-moderated online forum where people from across the globe share their struggles and insights with kindness and respect. At its most intimate, a Sangha can simply be one or two trusted friends with whom you can speak about the deepest questions of your heart without fear of judgment. The Buddha had a special name for such a friend, Kalyana, Mita, which means a noble friend or a virtuous companion. He once said that having such friends is not merely half of the spiritual life, it is the entirety of the spiritual life. This is the measure of its importance. So, what is it that a healthy Sangha provides? How does it serve as a direct antidote to the desolation of loneliness? A Sangha functions in several vital ways. First, it acts as a mirror for our practice. When we practice in isolation, it is very easy to delude ourselves or to lose our way. In a community, others reflect our own journey back to us. When we see a friend practicing with diligence and consistency, it inspires our own effort. When we speak about a particular struggle, like a persistent feeling of sadness, and see gentle nods of recognition around the room, we are immediately struck by the truth that we are not alone in our experience. This feeling of being seen and understood is the direct medicine for the story of loneliness, which tells us that our pain is unique and incomprehensible. Second, a Sangha is a source of profound encouragement. The spiritual path is not a straight upward line. It is a long journey with hills, valleys, and patches of thick, thorny forest. There will be times when our inspiration wanes, when we are filled with doubt, when we feel like giving up. It is in these moments that the presence of a noble friend or a supportive community is invaluable. A simple word of encouragement, a reminder of the progress we have already made, a shared story of overcoming a similar obstacle. These are the gifts that help us get back on our feet and take the next step on the path. Third, and perhaps most importantly, a healthy Sangha provides a safe container for our vulnerability. The world often demands that we be strong, capable, and put together. We learn to wear masks to hide our fears and insecurities. A Sangha is a space where the mask can come off. It is a place where we can have the courage to say, I am struggling with loneliness, or my mind was a complete mess during meditation today, or I lost my temper with my family this week. In a true Sangha, these confessions are not met with criticism or easy advice, but with the rare and precious gift of deep, compassionate listening. To be received in our full humanity, with both our strengths and our weaknesses, and to be met with acceptance rather than judgment, is perhaps the most powerful healing experience a person can have. It is the lived experience of connection that loneliness tells us is impossible. There is a simple and ancient parable that speaks to this truth. A single stick, on its own, is fragile and can be easily snapped in two, but if you gather many sticks together and bind them into a bundle, they become incredibly strong, almost unbreakable. Our individual determination to practice is like that single stick. On its own, in the face of life's challenges, it can be fragile. But when our effort is bound together with the support, wisdom, and friendship of a community, our collective resolve becomes powerful, resilient, and capable of weathering any storm. We can also think of ourselves as ships, setting out to cross a vast and unpredictable ocean. To make that journey entirely alone is a daunting and perilous prospect. But to sail as part of a flotilla with other ships within sight, where you can signal to each other in a storm, take comfort from each other's lights in the darkness, and share navigation charts, makes the entire voyage feel safer, more manageable, and far less lonely. A Sangha is our flotilla on the great ocean of life. The community, therefore, is where the rubber of the teachings meets the road of our human lives. It is where we practice interbeing, not as a theory, but as an active exchange of support and kindness. It is where our personal healing contributes to the healing of others, and their healing contributes to our own. Finding or creating such a community is one of the most concrete and beneficial actions we can take to protect ourselves from the pain of isolation. We have now assembled a complete and powerful toolkit for our journey. We have the wisdom of right view to see the world and ourselves clearly. We have the heart practices of metta and karuna to cultivate a mind of boundless kindness. We have the practical skill of letting go of our burdens. And now, we have the external support of the Sangha, our noble friends. With this full complement of inner and outer resources, we can now turn our attention to one of the most fundamental aspects of our well-being, an area where the stresses of modern life and the pain of loneliness often manifest most acutely, the simple act of sleeping. How can we bring this entire arsenal of wisdom and compassion to our pillow at night to transform a time of restless anxiety into a practice of deep, sacred, and restorative rest? We have now gathered a complete set of tools for our journey inward. We have the wisdom of right view that illuminates our path, the heart practices that soften our minds, the skill of letting go that unburdens us, and the support of the Sangha, our noble friends, who walk beside us. With these resources in hand, we turn our attention to one of the most intimate, vulnerable, and for many, most challenging parts of our day, the moment our head meets the pillow. We will now explore how to transform the simple, biological act of sleeping into a profound spiritual practice, a nightly journey into the silent realm of peace. For so many of us in the modern world, the bed is not a place of rest, it is a battlefield. The body may be exhausted from the day's labors, but the mind is running a furious marathon. It endlessly replays conversations, analyzing what we should have said. It rehearses for tomorrow's meetings, creating endless strategies and scenarios. It meticulously goes over our to-do list, generating anxiety about all that is not yet done. And in the quiet darkness, the ache of loneliness can feel more acute than ever as the mind clings to memories of past companionship or fears a future of solitude. The bed, which should be a sanctuary, becomes a place of struggle, and sleep, which should be a natural surrender, becomes a prize to be won through effort and anxiety. If we look at this experience of restlessness and insomnia through the lens of the teachings, we can diagnose it with great clarity. The sleepless mind is the time-traveling mind in overdrive. It is anywhere but the present moment where sleep actually happens. It is stuck in the past, generating regret, or lost in the future, generating fear. It is a mind in the grip of tanha, the thirst of craving. It is craving for a solution to a problem, craving for a sense of control, or craving to escape the simple and perhaps uncomfortable reality of just lying in the dark. It is a mind that is still identified with a solid, separate self, an ego that believes it must stay vigilant, that it cannot afford to let go of control, that it must protect its interest, even at the cost of its own rest. Sleep, in a sense, is a small death. It is a temporary dissolution of the ego, a surrender of our controlled, narrative self into a vast, unknowable darkness. And the ego is terrified of this surrender. To understand how to approach this, let us use a simple metaphor. Imagine that your mind, at the end of the day, is like a glass of water filled with mud and silt. Life has shaken this glass vigorously. The mud represents all your worries, your plans, your resentments, your anxieties, your feelings of loneliness. The water is murky, chaotic, and opaque. Your natural instinct, when you want the water to be clear, is to try to fix it. You might want to stick your hand in and try to grab the individual particles of mud, but this only stirs it up more. You might shake the glass, hoping the mud will magically vanish, but this only makes it worse. This is what we do at night when we try to fall asleep. We fight with our thoughts. We wrestle with our anxiety. We get angry at ourselves for being awake. We stir and stir the muddy water, and it only becomes murkier. The path of wisdom offers a radically different approach. To make the water clear, the wisest action is to do nothing at all. You simply set the glass down on a steady surface and you leave it alone. You trust in the natural laws of gravity. Slowly, peacefully, of its own accord, the mud and the silt will begin to settle to the bottom. The water, without any effort on your part, will return to its natural state, clear, still, and transparent. Your mind is exactly like this glass of water. The practice for sleep is not a practice of more doing, but of wise and skillful non-doing. It is the art of setting the mind down, of releasing the struggle, and allowing its own inherent nature, which is peace, to emerge. Let us now translate this principle into a guided practice you can use as you lie in bed. First, consciously create your sanctuary. As you get into bed, make the clear intention that this space, for this period of time, is an island of peace. It is a sacred space dedicated only to rest and surrender. You can say to yourself, for the next 8 hours, there are no problems that can be solved. There are no plans that can be finalized. There is no one I need to be and nothing I need to do. This is a time for letting go. This simple intention sets a new tone. It is a conscious permission slip for your mind and body to relax. Next, begin the practice of release through the body. Lie comfortably and bring your attention to your feet. As you breathe in, be aware of your feet. As you breathe out, imagine you are releasing all the walking, the standing, the running of the day. Let your feet become heavy and soft. Now bring your attention to your hands. On the out-breath, consciously let go of all the doing, the grasping, the typing, the holding of the day. Allow your hands to open and rest. Continue this process up through your body. Let your arms release the carrying of burdens. Let your shoulders release the weight of responsibility. Let your jaw release the clenching of unspoken words. Let your forehead release the furrow of worry. With each out-breath, you are systematically letting go of the day, allowing your body to sink more and more deeply into the support of the bed. Now rest your attention on the simple, natural rhythm of your breath. Do not try to control it. Simply feel the sensation of the breath as it flows in and out. The breath is your anchor to the present moment. If the mind wanders off into thought, as it will, gently and without judgment, guide it back to the feeling of the breath. Each breath can be experienced as a gentle wave of peace, washing over your entire being. There is nothing else you need to do, just this. Breathing in, I am here. Breathing out, I am at peace. Finally, as you grow stiller, you can introduce a gentle contemplation of the wisdom we have explored. As you lie there, feel the weight of your body. Gently contemplate that this body is not a separate, solid thing. It is a child of the earth. It is made of the same elements as the mountains and the trees. On the out-breath, allow your body to feel heavy, to surrender its full weight to the pull of gravity, as if you are returning to the embrace of the earth. Then, notice the thoughts that may still be drifting through your mind. Instead of getting caught by them, see them as clouds passing through the vast, open, empty sky of your awareness. You do not need to follow them or push them away. You are the sky, not the clouds. The thoughts have no power over you unless you give it to them. Feel your connection to the quiet darkness in the room, the great peace of the night. You are not separate from this peace. You are a part of it. The boundary between your body and the room begins to soften. You are dissolving into the stillness. This is the practice of turning sleep into a spiritual journey. It is a nightly lesson in non-clinging, in trust, and in surrender. You learn that peace is not something you achieve through effort, but something you allow by ceasing all effort. A deep and restorative night's sleep is not an accident. It is the natural fruit of a mind that has been trained, however gently, in the art of letting go. But this peaceful surrender at night is not an isolated event. It is supported by how we live during our waking hours. To truly find rest when the sun goes down, we must learn to practice peace when the sun is up. We must learn how to weave these moments of mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom into the very fabric of our busy, ordinary lives, transforming them into a continuous, flowing meditation. A deep and restorative night's sleep is not an isolated miracle. It is the natural fruit that grows from the tree of a day lived with awareness and peace. To find true rest when the sun goes down, we must learn to practice peace when the sun is up. But how is this possible? Our lives are not quiet meditation halls. They are filled with traffic, deadlines, difficult conversations, and endless demands on our attention. The great secret of this path is that it is not about withdrawing from life to find peace. It is about discovering peace in the very midst of life. It is the art of turning our entire life into a practice. There is a deep misconception that spiritual practice is something we do only when we are sitting on a cushion in a quiet room with our eyes closed. We see it as a brief 20-minute appointment with ourselves, after which we get up and dive back into the real world of stress and distraction. This approach, while helpful, creates a painful duality between our spiritual life and our real life. The true path dissolves this duality. It invites us to see that our office, our kitchen, our car, and our relationships are all part of our monastery. Life itself is the meditation hall. The practice is not about adding more things to our already overflowing schedule. It is about changing the quality of our attention, bringing a mindful, open-hearted presence to the things we are already doing. A story from the Zen tradition illustrates this perfectly. A young, eager student approached a great master and asked him for the ultimate secret of enlightenment. The master replied simply, "When I am hungry, I eat. When I am tired, I sleep." The student was confused and disappointed. "But master," he protested, "isn't that what everyone does?" The master smiled and said, "Number, when most people eat, they are not really eating. They are thinking of 1,000 other things, worrying about work, planning their evening, replaying an old argument. When they sleep, they are not truly sleeping, but are lost in 1,000 restless dreams. But when I eat, I just eat. When I sleep, I just sleep. This is the secret." It is the art of being fully present, of giving ourselves wholeheartedly to the one thing we are doing in this moment. Let us explore how to bring this quality of presence into the fabric of our ordinary day. The practice can begin with the very first moments of waking. Before you reach for your phone, before the tidal wave of the day's anxieties rushes in, grant yourself 3 conscious breaths. As you lie in bed, simply feel the sensation of your body, the weight of the blankets, the feeling of the pillow beneath your head. As you get up, feel your feet touch the floor. As you brush your teeth, instead of mentally planning your day, try to feel the sensation of the bristles on your teeth, the taste of the toothpaste, the coolness of the water. As you drink your first cup of tea or coffee, take at least the first 3 sips in silence and with full attention. Notice its aroma, its warmth, its flavor. By starting your day in this way, you are not adding any time to your routine. You are simply infusing your existing routine with a new quality of presence and peace. The simple act of eating is one of the most powerful opportunities for practice. Most of us eat on autopilot, barely tasting our food, our minds a million miles away. This mindful practice is to transform eating from a mechanical refueling into a sacred ritual of connection and gratitude. Before you begin, take a moment to look at your food. See its colors, its shapes, its textures. Acknowledge the miracle that is on your plate. Contemplate the reality of inner being, the sun, the earth, the rain, the farmer, the cook, all of the countless conditions that had to come together to create this meal that will now nourish your body. Then, as you take the first bite, chew it slowly. Notice the explosion of flavors and sensations in your mouth. When we eat in this way, we are not only nourishing our bodies more effectively, but we are also nourishing our minds with gratitude and presence. Even the most mundane chores can be transformed into a profound meditation. The Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh often taught about the practice of washing the dishes. He said that you should not wash the dishes just to get them clean so you can go and have dessert. You should wash the dishes for the sake of washing the dishes. As you stand at the sink, feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the beautiful iridescent colors in the soap bubbles. Hear the gentle sound of a plate being rinsed clean. Handle each bowl, each cup, with the care and attention you would give to a precious object. When you wash the dishes in this way, the task is no longer a resented burden. It becomes a peaceful and contemplative act, a moment of stillness and clarity in your day. Our interactions with other people provide a rich field for practicing with an open heart. When you are in conversation, you can practice deep, compassionate listening. This means setting aside your own internal monologue, your need to tell your own story, to offer advice, to formulate a clever reply, and offering the other person the full, spacious gift of your non-judgmental attention. To truly listen to another human being is one of the most profound acts of love. You can also practice mindful speech. Before you speak, you can create a micro pause and ask yourself 3 questions. Is what I am about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? This simple filter can prevent countless misunderstandings and hurts, and can transform our speech from a weapon of the ego into an instrument of connection and healing. What do we do when difficult emotions arise in the middle of a busy day? A flash of anger in traffic, a pang of loneliness while seeing a happy couple, a surge of anxiety before a meeting. We can use a simple form of spiritual first aid. The practice is to stop. Just for a second, pause whatever you are doing. Then take a conscious breath, or maybe 3. Feel the breath come in and feel the breath go out. This creates a space between the trigger and your habitual reaction. And finally, you can offer a gentle half smile. You don't have to feel happy. The gentle smile is a physical action that relaxes hundreds of muscles in your face and sends a signal of safety and ease to your entire nervous system. Stop, breathe, smile. It is a portable refuge you can take with you anywhere. As we practice in this way, we come to a crucial understanding. The goal is not to achieve some future state of perfect, uninterrupted peace. That is an unrealistic fantasy that only leads to more frustration. The real path is about finding moments of peace, islands of presence, right in the midst of our real, messy, beautiful, and complicated lives. Peace is not the destination at the end of the journey. Peace is the way we walk the journey. Every mindful breath is a moment of peace. Every kind word is a moment of peace. Every time we notice we have been lost in thought and gently return to the present, that act of returning is the practice. We are not trying to get somewhere else. We are learning again and again how to simply arrive fully right where we are. The time we spend in formal, seated meditation is like going to a gymnasium to strengthen the muscle of our awareness. The practice of mindfulness in daily life is when we use that muscle to navigate the world with more balance, strength, and grace. The two practices are not separate. They enrich and depend on each other. And as we continue to weave these threads of awareness and kindness into the fabric of our days, we begin to realize something extraordinary. We realize that the peace we have been cultivating is not an artificial state we are constructing. It is a homecoming. It is the uncovering of a deep and quiet stillness that has been here all along, waiting patiently for us beneath the noise of our unmindful lives. This leads us to the final, culminating insight of our journey, the discovery that peace is not just a practice or a state we can attain, but our own most fundamental nature. We are now ready to return to our true home. As we weave these threads of mindful awareness into the tapestry of our daily lives, as we learn to eat with presence, to listen with compassion, and to meet our own experience with kindness, we begin to notice something remarkable. A profound shift occurs in our fundamental understanding of this entire journey. We begin to see that the peace, the clarity, and the freedom we have been so diligently seeking are not the end products of our practice in the way that a house is the end product of a builder's labor. We are not, in fact, building something new. We are uncovering something ancient. We are not creating peace. We are returning to it. This leads us to the final and most liberating realization of the path. The discovery that peace is not a state to be achieved, but our own true nature, waiting patiently to be rediscovered. We are now ready to come home. For most of our lives, we have operated under a silent, deeply ingrained assumption of our own deficiency. We have believed that we are fundamentally flawed, broken, or incomplete, and that we must add something to ourselves from the outside, the right relationship, the right career, the right amount of success, the right spiritual experience in order to become whole. Most models of self-improvement are based on this idea of construction, of becoming a better, stronger, more confident version of yourself. The path of wisdom we have explored, however, reveals a different truth. It is not a path of addition, but of subtraction. It is not about becoming someone new. It is about courageously and gently unbecoming everything that is not truly you. Imagine that your true nature is like a magnificent, flawless diamond, brilliant and full of light. But over the course of your life, this diamond has become caked in layers of mud and grime. This mud is our conditioning, our fears, our resentments, our false beliefs about who we are, and our desperate clinging to the illusion of a separate self. The spiritual path is not the act of creating the diamond. The diamond's brilliance is already inherent and perfect. The path is simply the patient, compassionate, and sometimes difficult work of washing away the mud. With every act of mindfulness, we wash away a little dust of distraction. With every moment of compassion, we wash away a little grime of resentment. With every act of letting go, we wash away a little mud of clinging. The work is not to become worthy, but to realize the worthiness that has been there all along. We can also return to our trusted metaphor of the sky and the clouds. For so long, we have identified with the weather of our lives. When a dark cloud of loneliness or a thunderstorm of anger passed through our minds, we believed, I am lonely, I am angry. We believed we were the storm. The entire practice we have undertaken is a shift in identification. It is the realization that we are not the clouds, however dark or turbulent they may be. We are the vast, open, luminous sky. The sky is our true nature. It is always present, always whole, always untouched and unstained by the weather that passes through it. The clouds of loneliness, fear, and anxiety can obscure the blue sky for a time, but they can never harm it, and they are never what it truly is. The practice is simply remembering that you are the sky and learning to rest in that vast, peaceful awareness, allowing the clouds to come and go. There's a profound and ancient story that captures the essence of this great homecoming. It is the story of a man who was born into extreme poverty and lived his entire life in a tiny, dilapidated hut. He was convinced of his own destitution. Every day he would go out and beg for scraps of food, enduring hardship and humiliation, always feeling that he was lacking, that he was worthless. He spent his life searching for some small treasure, some stroke of luck that would save him from his misery. What he never knew was that buried directly beneath the floorboards of his own simple hut was an immense and inexhaustible treasure, a great chest filled with gold, diamonds, and priceless jewels. It had been there from the very beginning. His entire life was a painful search for something that he already possessed in abundance. One day, a wise and compassionate person who knew the secret of the house came to visit him. Seeing the poor man suffering, the wise friend did not give him a piece of gold. That would only solve his problem for a day. Instead, the friend told him the truth. Stop your painful and fruitless searching, the friend said. Stop believing in the story of your own poverty. Everything you have ever looked for, all the wealth and security you could ever desire, is already yours. It is right here in your own home, buried directly beneath your own feet. You simply need to have the faith to stop looking outside and the courage to start digging within. We are that poor man. Our dilapidated hut is our mistaken belief in a small, separate, and deficient self. We spend our lives begging for scraps of happiness, love, and validation from the outside world, convinced that we are fundamentally impoverished. The treasure buried beneath the floor is our own true nature, our Buddha Naturith, innate, inexhaustible capacity for peace, wisdom, joy, and love that is our birthright. The teachings of the Dharma are the wise friend, pointing the way not to a treasure in some distant land, but to the one that lies within our own heart. And the entire path we have explored the practice of mindfulness, compassion, and letting go is the act of digging. This is the ultimate fruit of the path. This is the final answer to loneliness. Freedom from loneliness does not mean you will never be physically alone again. It means that when you find yourself alone, you no longer experience it as a lack, because you have found the treasure within. You have come home to yourself. The desperate neediness that fueled the pain of loneliness has vanished, because you have realized you are not a beggar. You are the heir to an infinite fortune. The feeling is one of profound contentment, of quiet joy, of self-sufficiency in the most beautiful sense of the word. You are your own sanctuary. You are your own refuge. You are your own best company. And so this great journey of ours, which seemed to lead us through so many new and foreign territories of the mind and heart, from mindfulness to compassion, from not self to inner being, has ultimately led us right back to where we started. But we are not the same as when we began. We have journeyed far, only to arrive at the home we never truly left, and to know the place for the very first time. The peace we were seeking was never in a distant land or a future moment. It was, and always has been, right here, waiting patiently for us to come home. We began this journey together in a quiet room, sitting with a familiar modern ache of loneliness. We started by looking this difficult feeling directly in the eye, not as an enemy to be defeated, but as a wise, if painful, teacher. From that first step of mindful acceptance, We walked a long and ancient path. We diagnosed the source of our suffering, not in our external circumstances, but in the deep, universal habit of clinging, the thirst of a mind that believes it is separate and lacking. We then followed the path of wisdom, discovering the liberating truths of our own nature. We saw that we are impermanent, flowing streams of life, not solid, frozen statues. We searched for a separate, isolated self and found none, realizing that the lonely I we sought to protect was a beautiful illusion. And in seeing through that illusion, we awakened to the profound and joyful reality of inner being, the truth that we are not and have never been separate from the whole of life. We are woven from the sun, the earth, and the love of all our ancestors. With this wisdom as our guide, we learn to cultivate a heart of boundless kindness and compassion, and we practice the gentle art of letting go, unburdening ourselves from the heavy baggage of the past. If there is one essential message to take from our time together, it is this: peace is not something you acquire, it is something you uncover. The cure for the painful feeling of an inner void is not to frantically search for something to fill it. It is the realization that this perceived void is, in fact, a luminous, spacious, and peaceful fullness. It is your own true nature. The happiness and connection you have been seeking in the world outside is the very treasure that lies buried beneath the floor of your own heart. You do not need to add anything to yourself to be whole. You only need to gently remove that which obscures the wholeness that is already here. You now hold the map. You now have the tools. You have the anchor of the breath to bring you back to the present moment. You have the warmth of loving kindness to be a friend to yourself. You have the courage of compassion to connect with the world. You have the wisdom of emptiness to release you from fear. The quiet moments you may have once dreaded, the solitude you may have once fled, can now become your greatest sanctuary. The silence is no longer a sign of absence, but a space rich with presence, a place to come home to yourself. Walk this path with patience, with gentleness, and above all, with great kindness for your own beautiful heart. And may you find in the stillness of your own being a peace so profound that it follows you into your dreams. May you rest well, held in the silent, loving embrace of your own true nature.